Chapter 1619. Yi Yuan and Ling Qianyu's performance was the most eye-catching, especially Ling Qianyu's skinny body, which actually contained a powerful energy. Her opponent was forced to retreat step by step, and had no way to organize an effective counterattack. Bang! 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 A series of sounds of people falling to the ground rang out. The battle came to an abrupt end, and the victor was decided. Only the victors of the 10 stages were left standing proudly. The 10 of them were the most elite warriors of the Witch clan. Their faces were filled with pride, and their gazes lingered on each other with high fighting spirit. Tang Zheng took a step forward and looked at the 10 victors with gratification. His gaze lingered on Ling Qianyu for a few more seconds. Ling Qianyu met his gaze, and her heart skipped a beat. She understood that her identity had been completely seen through by Tang Zheng. She took a deep breath and suppressed all sorts of complicated thoughts, trying her best to remain calm and indifferent. Tang Zheng looked at her with gratification and said in a clear voice, "During the intermission, the winners of the next 5 matches will receive rewards, from pills to treasures. The rewards are all different, but without a doubt, the final winner will receive the greatest reward." As soon as he finished speaking, the 10 victors all revealed looks of pleasant surprise. They looked at each other in dismay, unable to hide the excitement in their hearts. Yi Yuan and Tang Zheng were familiar with each other, so he mustered up his courage and asked, "May I ask what the final winner's prize is?" Tang Zheng looked at Yi Yuan with a smile. His blazing gaze and resolute gaze seemed to have already taken the reward into his bag. Sacred artifact. Tang Zheng raised his finger and spoke concisely, but with a loud voice. Sacred artifact. Cries of surprise rang out one after another, and the sound of gasps rose and fell one after another. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. A normal magic treasure or pill was enough to make them happy, but a sacred artifact was enough to make them go wild with joy. Really? Some people were skeptical? Tang Zheng made the final decision and said, "Of course I'm a man of my word. The final prize is the sacred artifact. The final winner will receive this sacred artifact." Immediately, no one doubted this point anymore. Those 10 people all revealed expressions of ecstasy, and the others were endlessly envious. They actually missed this kind of opportunity. Tian Chanzi looked at Tang Zheng in surprise. He didn't know that Tang Zheng had prepared a sacred artifact as a reward. That was a sacred artifact, not a magical artifact. Where did he get a sacred artifact? Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously, but he didn't explain further. Of course, he wasn't just making empty promises. He had really prepared a saint tool. This was a transcendent artifact that he had specially spent several days gathering materials and refining. The 9 revolving pill furnace could already refine a saint artifact, but it had extremely high requirements for the raw materials. Tang Zheng had painstakingly searched everywhere for enough raw materials to refine a saint artifact. Although he had the ability to refine artifacts, he was limited by the lack of raw materials. Even the cleverest woman could not cook without rice, so he had no other choice. However, to the others, this was already an extremely rare miracle. During this short period of rest, none of the 10 contestants dared to waste it. They were filled with even more fighting spirit for the upcoming battles, and were all prepared to charge towards the top of the mountain. Although Yi Yuan's cultivation was profound, and he was one of the best in the younger generation, he did not dare to let his guard down when he saw the passionate gazes of the others. Tang Zheng took a few steps forward, faced the crowd, and said in a clear voice, "The second round of the competition begins." The 10 people split into 5 groups and started the intense battle again. Although they had consumed a lot of energy and had not completely recovered, the battle was even more intense than before. It could really be described as cruel. Everyone gave it their all. All sorts of magic treasure flew in the air, and rumbling sounds could be heard incessantly, like the sound of thunder exploding. If not for the protection of the array formation, such a huge commotion would have already spread to the outside world, attracting countless gazes. This was also what Tang Zheng was relying on. No matter what kind of earth-shattering commotion happened in the villa area, the people outside would not know about it, so the competition on the stage would not affect the people outside at all. The sounds of cheering rose and fell one after another. It was extremely intense, and finally, someone had decided the victor. Some people fell from the stage, while others were restrained by their opponent's magic treasure and lost their ability to move. Yi Yuan was the first to win. There was no doubt about his strength. He was able to defeat his opponent, and the two of them did not seem to be on the same level. Tang Zheng nodded his head in gratification. As expected of the witch clan who had followed him since the beginning, his strength could not be underestimated. Tang Zheng had already seen that Yi Yuan's cultivation had actually reached the 9th stage of the Yuanying realm. One must know that it was almost impossible for him to reach this step normally. However, ever since the witch clan followed Tang Zheng, the spirit chi of heaven and earth had also improved. With the true teachings of Tang Zheng, the witch clan was also good at refining pills. Because of these combined factors, the potential of the witch clan had completely exploded. It would not be an exaggeration to say that they had traveled 1,000 miles in a day. Suddenly, Tang Zheng squinted his eyes and looked at another scene in astonishment. Out of the 5 matches, 4 of them had already been decided, and there was only one match left that was still in an intense battle. However, what shocked everyone was that this match was in an anxious state, and they could not help but raise their eyebrows. Ling Qianyu's strength has clearly just entered the Yuanying realm. Why is he able to hold back that Yuanying 5th stage opponent? Tang Zheng could see the disparity in strength between the two sides with a single glance. Ling Qianyu's improvement was indeed beyond his expectations, which meant that Ling Qianyu was indeed a good seedling for cultivation, with limitless potential. However, no matter how great his potential was, there was no way to make up for this kind of gap. However, Ling Qianyu was like a roly-poly. Although he was exhausted, he did not fall down. Instead, he dragged his opponent step by step into the abyss. Suddenly, Ling Qianyu saw a flaw in her opponent's defense and attacked. Bang! His opponent flew out of the stage. Although he was unwilling, he had nothing to say. Because if he lost, he lost. There was no excuse to speak of. Ling Qianyu directly collapsed on the stage, gasping for breath, exhausted and drenched in sweat, as if he had been fished out of a river. There were 5 remaining victors, but there were only 2 matches. One of them would draw lots to advance, and there would be no need to compete. If one of them was lucky enough, then they would be able to rest, reap the benefits, and prepare for the next big battle. Ling Qianyu was very lucky. She had actually drawn the lucky lot to advance directly. All she needed to do was rest, and wait for the next big battle. The others looked at Ling Qianyu, and all of them praised her good luck. However, no one thought that her good luck would last forever, because the closer it was to the end, the more it would depend on one's strength, and not just luck. The 3rd round of the competition began. Tang Zheng did not pay attention to the stage, and instead walked over to Ling Qianyu, who was sitting cross-legged and continuously adjusting her breathing. Nan Nan was alive and kicking. She also chased after her. Chapter 16:20. Tang Zheng looked at Ling Qianyu with a burning gaze. He felt guilty and said, "How have you been these days?" Ling Qianyu did not answer. Instead, she knelt in front of Tang Zheng and kowtowed to him several times. Heaven's Book 2. Tang Zheng was shocked. He hurriedly helped her up and asked, "What are you doing? Why do you have to do this? If it wasn't for you saving me, I would have already died at the border. So my life was given to me by you. You are my benefactor," Ling Qianyu emotionally said. "You're exaggerating." Tang Zheng directly helped her up. She could no longer kneel, but her eyes were still full of excitement when she looked at Tang Zheng. "Your talent is extremely good, which is why you can cultivate so quickly. I am very gratified. In the future, you should continue to work hard so that you won't let down your grandfather's sacrifice," Tang Zheng said with heartfelt words. "Yes, I will remember." Ling Qianyu nodded heavily. Her face was very serious. Nana tilted her head and looked at the two. She suspiciously said, "Sister Qianyu, you are so powerful. Let's compete and see who is more powerful." Nana's eyelids jumped. She was eager to try. Ling Qianyu had a difficult expression on her face as she said in shame, Nan, you are so powerful. How could I be your opponent?" Nana pouted and said, "How am I powerful? The last time I went to Dianan, I didn't help brother much. I am not powerful at all." During the trip to Dianan, Nana vowed to share Tang Zheng's worries. However, in the end, she did not get what she wanted. After all, she was a little girl. In such a dangerous society, strength was not the decisive factor. Ling Qianyu was at a loss. She looked helplessly at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He grabbed Nana's shoulder and deliberately said with a straight face, "Nana, don't be ridiculous. Don't disturb Qianyu's rest. She still has a big battle to fight." Tang Zheng led the reluctant Nana away and turned his attention to the ring. The battle was very intense, and everyone was giving it their all. Yi Yuan was still extremely dazzling. His attacks were extremely sharp, causing people to raise their eyebrows. Boom. The stage beneath Yi Yuan's feet collapsed with a loud bang. His opponent fell into the ruins of the stage and was unable to get up again. He was completely defeated. Following that, the scores of the other battle arena were also given out. The two victors became the focus of everyone's attention, receiving everyone's praise and envy. A light flashed in Tang Zheng's hand as he said, "This is a bottle of medicinal pills, and this is a heaven-grade magic artifact. The second and third place will receive these two prizes. Among the three of you, two will receive these prizes." Everyone held their breaths and waited quietly, because they knew very well that Tang Zheng would reveal the third prize. Sure enough, a light flashed in Tang Zheng's hand, and a wide and thick gigantic sword appeared in front of Tang Zheng. It emitted a sharp light and floated lightly in the air. Especially the holy inscription on it, it was extremely eye-catching. Holy artifact. One by one, cries of surprise rose and fell. There were also sounds of gasping as pairs of eyes stared at the gigantic sword with burning gazes. Tang Zheng himself used a sword, so he naturally had the most experience in refining a sword, so the magic treasure he chose was a sword. Furthermore, he had spent a lot of effort and precious materials to refine these materials, and there was only one sword. However, this sword could not be compared to the mysterious hidden sword. Although it was a holy artifact, there were many holy inscriptions, and it was not simple. Even so, it was still a holy artifact, which meant that he could refine a holy artifact. One had to know how difficult it was for Wuxia to refine a holy artifact back then. In the shaman tribe, no one had a holy artifact, not even the elders. Therefore, if anyone was lucky enough to obtain a holy artifact, they would be the only one in the shaman tribe. Whether it was glory or status, they would be extraordinary. Under the dazzling light of the holy artifact, the other members of the shaman tribe all revealed looks of envy as they stared at the two victors. The remaining three people would draw lots to decide who was the lucky one. In other words, the winner did not need to compete at all. He could directly advance to the finals and join the ranks of the competitors for the holy artifact. Who would be the lucky one? No one was optimistic about Ling Qianyu. She had already been lucky once, so it was impossible for her to be lucky again. When the results of the draw came out, everyone was shocked. Ling Qianyu was actually the lucky one again. How can her luck be so good? Many people looked at Ling Qianyu enviously. Tang Zheng sighed. Ling Qianyu was really lucky. Back then, she had met him at the brink of death. Now she had actually drawn the lucky lot twice. However, this was the result. No one could criticize or question it. Yi Yuan and the other clansmen once again walked onto the stage. After a series of battles, the two of them had consumed a lot of energy, but their fighting spirit was still high. Boom, boom, boom. The battle between the two was extremely intense. The stage did not last for long before it turned into ruins. However, the battle had not stopped. The ruins flew up into the sky like a huge ball, completely enveloping them. They could no longer be seen. However, the sounds of the intense battle could still be clearly heard by everyone. Everyone opened their eyes wide and stared at the battlefield without blinking. Crash! All of a sudden, the ruins fell from the sky. Everything fell silent. Everyone stared at the ruins. Only one person stood there proudly. Yi Yuan. Everyone cheered as Yi Yuan's name resounded through the clouds. Yi Yuan took a deep breath. His face was pale white. After a series of battles, his stamina and power had been greatly depleted. However, he still stood proudly. His desire for victory had overcome the limits of his body. Tang Zheng looked at him with gratification, thinking that he was not mistaken. Yi Yuan was indeed very outstanding. What followed was the great battle between Yi Yuan and Ling Qianyu. Everyone's blood was boiling. Who would win between Yi Yuan and Ling Qianyu? After Yi Yuan rested for a while, the two of them finally stood face to face on the stage. The battle seemed to be about to begin at any time, but Ling Qianyu suddenly stopped. I request for a pause. He has yet to recover his strength, so I will not win. Ling Qianyu said indifferently. She had already rested for enough time and recovered to her peak condition. However, Yi Yuan was obviously not like that. She could see it, so she spoke bluntly. Hua. Everyone started to discuss amongst themselves. They did not expect her to be so frank. Yi Yuan's face was red as he said, "No need. If I still can't defeat her, I won't have the qualifications to stand here." Although Ling Qianyu was only in his teens, ever since he followed Tang Zheng, his body had grown taller and taller than before. Yi Yuan was actually a teenager in his teens, but he was very tall and sturdy. Ling Qianyu still looked very small and skinny in front of him. If you insist, then I am willing to admit defeat. Ling Qianyu had a lot of character, so he simply turned around and walked down the stage, leaving Yi Yuan standing alone on the stage. Chapter 16:21. Ling Qianyu's actions caused everyone to be taken aback. They never thought that after working so hard, she would actually be willing to admit defeat at the last moment? What kind of show was this? Yi Yuan looked at her in confusion, but he could not guess what she was thinking. He asked suspiciously, "What do you mean?" Ling Qianyu said calmly, "I've already said it before, fighting with a person who is almost exhausted. Even if I win, I will not win." Tang Zheng's eyes lit up, the corner of his mouth curled up, and looked at her with a smile. He already understood Ling Qianyu's thoughts, and could not help but praise her. It was not easy to have such courage at such a young age. He had not saved her in vain. However, Yi Yuan said with a red face, "I won't lose, I still have the strength." Before he could finish, Tang Zheng interrupted him and said, "Yi Yuan, I will bestow you with a pellet. After you consume it, you will be able to recover your strength and stamina very quickly, and then fight with Ling Qianyu with all your might. This way, it will be the fairest. No matter if you win or lose, no one will complain." "I don't use pills." Yi Yuan still wanted to argue, but Tang Zheng flicked his finger, and a pill flew in front of him. He had no choice but to catch it. Looking at the sparkling and translucent pill in his palm that was emitting a strange fragrance, he had no choice but to obey Tang Zheng's orders. Immediately, a powerful force rushed from his throat to his 8 extraordinary meridians and internal organs. In almost a blink of an eye, Yi Yuan's exhausted power had completely recovered. He was wild with joy and hurriedly moved his muscles and bones. His joints were like firecrackers that kept popping out. Bang! He smashed his fists together and stared at Ling Qianyu with a burning gaze. He eagerly said, "I'm done, let's fight to our heart's content and decide the victor." Ling Qianyu nodded his head calmly, and said simply, "All right." Whiz. His figure drifted and disappeared in the blink of an eye. He turned into a gust of wind and lightly flew towards Yi Yuan. However, this seemingly light movement contained boundless killing intent. Yi Yuan's pupils constricted. He anxiously used his sacred art and started to fight intensely with Ling Qianyu. Immediately, everyone's eyes were attracted by the two's drifting figures. Unlike the previous head-on battle, Ling Qianyu changed her strategy. It turned out that when she competed with her other opponents, she would always choose to face them head-on. Moreover, she was not inferior to her other opponents at all. But now that she was facing Yi Yuan, she cleverly changed her strategy. Instead, she adopted a guerrilla tactic and did not completely clash head-on with Yi Yuan. Ling Qianyu was a smart person. She was very clear about the difference in cultivation between her and Yi Yuan. This gap that was like a chasm was not that easy to make up for. Therefore, if she chose to fight head-on, the result would be clear soon. She would lose without a doubt. If he could not win, he could only win with his wits. Yi Yuan's patience was not very good. This was the opponent's weakness that Ling Qianyu knew. Once Yi Yuan's patience was worn down, he would panic, and only then would he have the opportunity to take advantage of it. The moment the two sides exchanged blows, the others started to discuss, especially Ling Qianyu's strategy. Many people were shocked. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up into a smile. Of course, he was very clear about the difference between the two, and could not help but say with interest, "How smart." Nana tilted her head and asked in confusion, "Why doesn't she fight head-on? That would save a lot of time." Tang Zheng patted her head and said with a smile, "Then why don't you think about it yourself?" Nana scratched her head and thought for a long time, then shook her head blankly. "I don't understand. Why do you keep dragging this out when you can clearly end it quickly?" With her small head, she really couldn't figure out why she had to go through so much trouble. Tang Zheng laughed dryly and asked Tian Chanzi, who was beside him, "Who do you think will win?" Tian Chanzi's gaze was unwilling to move away, and said in a deep voice, "Why are there so many monsters by your side? This little girl is the god of progress. It is truly rare." In addition, she was also very smart, and actually knew how to outsmart him. Although Yi Yuan's cultivation is stronger, I'm afraid it won't be good for him either. As for victory or defeat, it might be 50-50. Tian Chanzi had seen too many times how the weak defeated the strong, especially when it happened to Tang Zheng, so he was not so superstitious about the overwhelming advantage of cultivation. Sometimes having a high cultivation did not mean that one would definitely win. Tang Zheng looked at him in surprise, and said meaningfully, "I never thought that you would think so highly of Ling Qianyu?" Tian Chanzi asked in surprise, "Don't tell me you don't think so?" The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up into a mysterious smile, but he did not say anything. The battle between the two turned into a long battle, and Yi Yuan's patience was slowly being worn down. He was a person who was used to cutting the Gordian knot, and had never encountered such a torturous battle before. In the past, he had always ended the battle as quickly as possible. Whether he won or lost, the outcome would be revealed in an instant. This kind of prolonged battle was truly a form of torture. His eyes gradually turned red as he roared and attacked Ling Qianyu. It was precisely this sudden attack that caused him to accidentally reveal a flaw. Ling Qianyu had been waiting for this kind of opportunity the entire time, so how could he miss it? With a shake of his hand, a cold light directly attacked Yi Yuan's body. Bang! One had to know that he was a person who had cultivated the primal chaos Vajra spell before, so his body's resistance to attacks was far greater than that of ordinary people. However, there was still a wound on his body. From this, it could be seen how fierce Ling Qianyu's attack was. However, Yi Yuan was not defeated so easily. He flipped in the air and suddenly raised his head, staring at Ling Qianyu with burning eyes, as if his eyes were about to spit fire. He did not stop at all, and rushed out again. Just like this, the angrier he was, the fiercer his attacks seemed, but in reality, the more flaws there were. Once, twice. Many times he was actually knocked down by Ling Qianyu many times. This scene caused the others to be shocked, and they all cried out in alarm. The Witch Clan elder also stood up from his chair with an anxious look on his face. Yi Yuan was the last person in the Witch Clan. If he lost, then where would the Witch Clan's face go? He anxiously looked at Tang Zheng and said anxiously, "Yi Yuan he." Tang Zheng waved his hand and said, "He's too smooth. It's a good thing that someone can grind his temper." Just as he finished speaking, a thought popped up in his mind. Ever since the Witch Clan left the 10,000 huge mountains, they had been living under his protection. Although they had participated in several great battles, their independence was far from enough, and their experience was also far from enough. If this continued, the title of natural warrior would not be worthy of its name. If the Witch Clan wanted to transform, they would have to experience the tempering of countless amounts of blood and fire. Just like himself, he had also experienced countless amounts of blood and fire, the test and tempering of life and death, before he could become as strong as he was today. This reminded him that after the Spring Festival, where would the Witch Clan go? He would probably have to think about this question. Guarding the house should not be the mission of the Witch Clan. The Witch Clan had another mission. Chapter 1622. The battle between the two continued. Yi Yuan had already passed the most difficult stage, and the situation had changed once again. In the end, The difference in strength between the two of them was too great. Ling Qianyu relied on her little tricks to gain the upper hand for a period of time. Yi Yuan heaved a long sigh of relief, stabilized his footing, and launched a swift and fierce counterattack. Ling Qianyu retreated step by step. Her expression became unnatural. Her cheeks flushed red, and she hastily responded. However, her defeat was already decided, and she was powerless to reverse the situation. Bang! After a muffled sound, she flew out and landed on the ground in a sorry state, unable to get up again. The strength of this attack was not small, and Yi Yuan was also angered by it. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, his cultivation was higher than his opponent's, yet he was still dragged into the mud, causing his face to lose all light. Naturally, he did not show any mercy when he attacked. Puff! Ling Qianyu spat out a mouthful of blood, her face becoming incomparably pale. Yi Yuan knew that he had failed, so he immediately rushed over and helped her up, asking with concern, "How are you?" Ling Qianyu shook her head slightly and said weakly, "I won't die, I lost." Although she had once hoped that she could defeat the strong as the weak, reality was still cruel. She had no choice but to accept all of this. However, she did not accept her fate just like that. She forced herself to say, "One day, I will defeat you." Yi Yuan never thought that she would actually have such courage. He could not help but laugh involuntarily, and the trace of resentment he originally had disappeared into thin air. "Do you really have that much confidence?" he teased. Ling Qianyu nodded. "Of course I have confidence, and I have full confidence." Yi Yuan laughed out loud. "All right, then I'll wait for you." I announced that the winner of the competition is Yi Yuan. At the end of the competition, Tang Zheng stood on the high platform and looked around. He stared at the people of the witch clan who had bright eyes, and announced with a voice that was as loud as a bell, "Yi Yuan! Yi Yuan!" The cheers seemed to break through the clouds. His victory was well-deserved, and no one did not believe him. Naturally, he received the most cheers. "Yi Yuan, please come to the stage." Yi Yuan was extremely excited. He walked up the stage with large strides and stopped in front of Tang Zheng. Their eyes met, and the excitement on Yi Yuan's face and heart could not be concealed. "The other 4 winners, please come to the stage as well." Tang Zheng had said that there would be prizes for the top 5, so it was time to fulfill his promise. The 4 of them couldn't hide their excitement as they stepped onto the stage. Even Ling Qianyu's eyes were brimming with excitement. She had always been fighting alone, cultivating bitterly, and had received very little help from the outside world. If there was a prize, there was no doubt that it would increase her strength. Many pairs of eyes stared at the prizes in Tang Zheng's hand. The sacred tool was especially eye-catching. Tang Zheng glanced at the few of them and said in a clear voice, "In order to commend your wonderful performance, I will give you a prize. I hope that you will continue to work hard and not let my painstaking efforts go to waste." As soon as he finished speaking, the prize turned into a few rays of light and flew into everyone's hands. Immediately, someone was so excited that tears welled up in his eyes. His eyes were red as he said, "We will definitely remember your teachings and never dare to forget." Yi Yuan even knelt down on one knee. The sacred artifact sword stabbed into the high platform, and with a bang, the high platform trembled slightly. He said excitedly, "I, Yi Yuan, swear that I will obey your orders to the death. I swear I will obey your orders to the death." The others also knelt down on one knee, and even Ling Qianyu was no exception. The witch tribesmen knelt on the ground. Tang Zheng was so excited that he did not say a single word. Suddenly, Kacha! The high platform beneath his feet shattered into pieces. It was actually unable to withstand the power of that sword strike. Tang Zheng and the rest did not fall down, but floated in the air. Otherwise, they would definitely be in a sorry state. Yi Yuan knelt in the ruins, looking slightly embarrassed. He was shocked and stammered, "I." Tang Zheng did not mind and laughed out loud. "Today is New Year's Eve, the competition has ended, and the following is the new year. Everyone eat and drink well." Wow! Cheers once again resounded through the clouds. Tang Zheng was having fun with the people at the open-air bonfire banquet, exchanging cups with the witch tribesmen, and every witch tribesman came to toast him. He could no longer remember how much he had drunk. Fortunately, his body had already been cultivated to an extremely strong state, so he did not fall down. Of course, if he were to use his sacred art, no matter how much wine he had, it would not be able to get him drunk. Now, with his physical body's resistance to alcohol, he was actually a little tipsy. Yi Yuan was already a little drunk. He was the biggest reaper, so naturally he could not avoid round after round of toasts. He also had a forthright personality and did not reject anyone. Suddenly, a small figure ran to his side and said coquettishly, "Big brother Yi Yuan, can I take a look at your sacred artifact?" Yi Yuan's sacred artifact had already been observed by countless people. He lowered his head and saw that it was actually Nana, so he naturally would not reject her. He carefully handed the sacred artifact over to her and warned, "Nana, this is a sacred artifact, don't play around with it." Nana casually waved his hand a few times, whoosh whoosh whoosh, streams of sword chi crisscrossed, and a crack appeared on the ground. The others were all very careful when observing the sacred artifact, unlike Nana, who was as casual as him. Yi Yuan was so scared that he woke up from his drunkenness and really wanted to take it back. He swallowed his saliva and advised, "Nana, this is a sacred artifact. You have to be careful." Nana rolled her eyes at him and said, "It's not like I've never seen a sacred artifact before. Furthermore, the quality of this sacred artifact is not high, so what's the point of being so precious?" Yi Yuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The sacred artifact was not a treasure. Who else would dare to speak so arrogantly? Probably only Nana could do so. Her master was the mysterious lady of the ninth heaven, and she also had Tangzheng who loved her so much, so no one could compare to her. Nana casually played with it a few times, then lost interest and casually threw it out. Yi Yuan hurriedly caught it, and could not bear to take it out again, hiding it tightly. However, he immediately noticed something strange. A pair of blazing eyes were staring straight at him, causing his scalp to go numb. He abruptly turned his head, and discovered that the person staring at him was actually Nan Nan. That pair of big round eyes were perfectly round, like two black pearls. "Nana, why are you looking at me like that?" Yi Yuan asked curiously. "I want to challenge you," Nana said. "What, challenge me?" Yi Yuan thought that he had heard wrongly, and laughed involuntarily as he looked at her. Nana firmly nodded his head. "Yes, I want to challenge you. You are the strongest warrior in the witch clan, so of course I will choose the strongest warrior to challenge." Yi Yuan hurriedly hid the magic treasure in his bosom, as if he was afraid that Nana would covet his sacred artifact. Nana rolled her eyes at him, seeing through his thoughts, and said, "It's not like I'm greedy for your magic treasure. I don't care, I just want to challenge you." "Are you serious?" Yi Yuan heaved a sigh of relief. Nana nodded. "Of course it's true." Yi Yuan felt relieved. "All right, then we can spar a bit. Don't worry, I will definitely show mercy." Chapter 1623. No one noticed that one of the main characters, Yi Yuan, had disappeared. No one had deliberately circulated their energy to dissolve the alcohol. So many people were already dead drunk. Heavenly Voice Novel 2 Tangzheng had already returned to his room, but he did not go to his own room. Instead, he was supported by Mu Hongyan to her room. Since the other women were not here, she would not miss this good opportunity. Tangzheng immediately laid on the soft bed. His eyes blurred as he looked at Mu Hongyan. Mu Hongyan's face also turned red, like a ripe apple, as she stared at him in a daze. An invisible attraction spread between them, and the two heads slowly leaned against each other. Ing. The two mouths were tightly pressed together. After a long while, Mu Hongyan's heart raced, and she pushed him away while panting. She glanced at the door and said, "Be careful, Nana will see it when she comes in." "What are you afraid of?" Tangzheng laughed sinisterly. "She's slowly growing up. She's smarter than the average child. She knows more than you think, just like a little adult." Mu Hongyan pouted. "She must have gone to play. Don't worry about her." Tangzheng had just tasted a little sweetness. How could he be willing to give up just like that? Bang. However, just as he finished speaking, the door was pushed open by a strong force. Nana skipped in excitedly. Tangzheng and Mu Hongyan bounced back as if they had been electrocuted. Mu Hongyan tidied up her clothes with a red face and pretended to be calm as she asked, Nana, why are you so happy? Nana opened her eyes wide and said excitedly, Mom, let me tell you a piece of good news. I am the strongest. Tang Zheng and Mu Hongyan looked at her in confusion, not knowing what she meant. Seeing that the two of them did not understand what he meant, Nana pouted and said faintly, I defeated Yi Yuan, isn't that powerful enough? Child, don't talk nonsense, Mu Hongyan lectured. Are you serious? Tang Zheng was skeptical, because from Nanan's expression, it did not seem like she was lying. Of course it's true. Nana proudly raised his head, stared at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze and said, So, you also have to reward me with a saint artifact. A saint artifact that is even better than Yi Yuan's sword. I don't like that big guy. Mu Hongyan's expression also became serious. She realized that her daughter was not bragging. Regarding her daughter's cultivation, it was always the Empyrean fairy who taught her, and she did not ask too much. In any case, she was very clear that her daughter's strength was higher than hers. He never thought that she would actually be so high that she could defeat Yi Yuan. One had to know that the difference in age between the two of them was huge. Tang Zheng had a straight face as he stared at Nana with bright eyes. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate her body as he took in her cultivation and strength. Her cultivation had actually reached such a realm unknowingly. He did not know how the Empyrean fairy had taught her this disciple. Her short period of cultivation was equivalent to a lifetime of hard work for others. She was actually also a 9th stage Yuanying, and Yuanying was very lively like a little baby. Her cultivation was on par with Yi Yuan, so she definitely had a divine ability that Yi Yuan did not have, so it was not too difficult to defeat Yi Yuan. How did your master teach you? Tang Zheng could not help but sigh. Nana tilted his head, recalled for a while and replied, Master gave me a lot of beans. Beans. Tang Zheng and Mu Hongyan looked at each other in dismay. They did not know what kind of bean it was, but it actually had such a miraculous effect. They are pills, but I like to call them beans. Nana explained. What kind of pill did the Empyrean fairy give you? Tang Zheng was shocked, although pills were good things, but of all things, being greedy was not necessarily a good thing. Furthermore, if he gave her too many pills, what if she improved too quickly and went berserk in the future? It was not a good thing to try to grow a seedling. I don't know what kind of pills they are, but in any case, there are a lot of pills. Master said that most people are worried that if they eat too many pills, their cultivation will increase too quickly, and then they will not be able to control it, and it will be easy for them to go berserk. However, with her by my side, I don't have to worry about these problems at all. Nana raised his head, revealing a proud and complacent expression. It was obvious that he agreed with his master's words. Mu Hongyan looked at Tang Zheng worriedly. This kind of thing was only up to him. Tang Zheng looked at Nana thoughtfully, thinking carefully. The Empyrean fairy's words seemed to have opened a door for him. Although there was suspicion of rushing the seedlings to help them grow, once the process was under control, then there was no need to worry about going berserk. Nana had her as a bodyguard, so there was no need to worry about this problem. The others did not have this advantage, but if there was a way to make up for this danger, then they could use the pills to quickly improve their cultivation. Then what was the most effective way to avoid going berserk? Of course, it was to get rid of the inner demons. Once the inner demons were gone, then there was no need to worry about going berserk. Of course, there was a way to get rid of the inner demons in this world, and he was one of the beneficiaries. However, his cultivation was too low in the past, so he did not dare to have extravagant hopes. But now his cultivation was very powerful, so perhaps there was a way to solve this problem. Once this problem was solved, the cultivation of the people around him would improve by leaps and bounds. In the future, whether it was against the Dragon Slayers or the Grandmasters, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Clap. He suddenly clapped his hands as he was overjoyed at the unexpected good news. He picked up Nan Nan and raised her up high as he cheered. Nan Nan, you really are a lucky star. You have solved a big problem for me. Although Nana was very confused, she said proudly, Of course, I'm so powerful. Of course I'm a lucky star. Mu Hongyan did not know whether to laugh or cry. Looking at this happy scene, her heart was incomparably soft. She said coquettishly, "Nana is still so young. You should spoil her." Tang Zheng did not mind and said, "I'm serious." "Then what problem did she solve for you?" Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously. "You'll know in the future. Nana, you want a holy tool, right? Don't worry, brother will fulfill your wish. Wait for me to collect the materials, then I'll refine a holy tool for you." Yay! Nana's eyes lit up. She raised her fist and cheered. "Then you two play first. I happen to have an idea. I'll go do something for a while." Tang Zheng put down, gave Mu Hongyan a look and said, Nana was back. The two of them could not do anything with real swords and spears, so they might as well go back to the room to test their ideas. Mu Hongyan looked at him bitterly. She had no choice but to nod in agreement. The bonfire party outside was still lively. Tang Zheng had already returned to his room. He calmed himself down and used his supernatural powers. Counting the days, it had been a month since he last entered Langia Pavilion. It was just right for him to enter again. Sigh, the Dragon Slayers can enter Langia Pavilion at any time. If I can still only enter once a month, then if they come in, even with the precautions set up by me and the Dragon King, it may not be 100% safe. Just in case, I have to have a way to enter Langia Pavilion at any time. Then I can successfully stop the Dragon Slayers. This time, I have to think of a way to achieve these two goals. Chapter 1624. In Langia Pavilion, Tang Zheng went straight to the 4th floor and saw the exorcism mirror in the center of the empty space. It was as tall as a person. The exorcism mirror was made of an unknown material. It was completely black and engraved with complicated patterns. It looked like a circle of lace wrapped around the mirror. He walked straight to the exorcism mirror. His figure appeared in the mirror. It was incomparably clear. There were no more illusions, and there was no black chi on his body. This was because the black chi represented the inner demons. The inner demons had been eliminated, so naturally, it was incomparably clean. He walked around the exorcism mirror and looked it up and down. He had never thought of this before, so naturally, he had not carefully sized up the exorcism mirror. Now that he had carefully observed and thought about it, he muttered to himself thoughtfully, I can't bring anyone else into Langia Pavilion. Naturally, I can only take the exorcism mirror out, just like taking other magic treasures. However, if I take it away, the other dragons won't be able to exorcise the inner demons. He pinched his chin and stared at the exorcism mirror with bright eyes. After a long time, he slapped his thigh and said, I've got it. If I can return the exorcism mirror, won't this problem be solved? However, this was not an easy task. In the past, after he took away the magic treasures, he had thought about whether he could return them to Langia Pavilion. However, he failed after trying. He could take the magic treasures from Langia Pavilion, but he could not return them. This was a one-way process. It didn't work in the past, but it doesn't mean it won't work now. He shook his head, and his gaze gradually became determined. Bang! He grabbed the exorcism mirror with both hands, but it did not move at all. Rise! He growled and exerted force with both hands. However, he found that the exorcism mirror was as heavy as 1,000 kilograms, but it still did not move. He let go of his hands and looked at the exorcism mirror in surprise. This mirror was really strange. He could not move it, let alone take it out of Langia Pavilion. Brute force won't work. I have to think of another way. He did not give up. With a thought, a mighty aura rose from his body. Bang! His hands landed on the exorcism mirror again. The exorcism mirror buzzed and trembled. He had already used his divine power. The power was unimaginable. But even so, the exorcist mirror only trembled, and did not actually leave the ground. Whoosh! Tang Zheng exhaled heavily. The muscles in his arms trembled, but he did not achieve the desired effect. I can even move Mount Buzhou. Do you think I can't move a mere mirror? He gritted his teeth, unwilling to admit defeat. He might as well go all out against the exorcist mirror. Bang! Whoosh! He used the sky-swallowing technique, and 2 black holes spread out in his palms. The violent suction force produced a huge vortex. The 2 black holes merged into one, and the black light completely enveloped the exorcist mirror. The exorcist mirror trembled violently and gradually left the ground. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. He was overjoyed. Ha ha ha, the sky-swallowing technique is indeed powerful. Even the exorcist mirror is unable to withstand its immense power. Of course, he would not allow the exorcist mirror to be sucked into the black hole. That would be equivalent to entering the heavenly realm. If the exorcist mirror turned into a wisp of energy, wouldn't all his previous efforts be wasted? He would also destroy an extremely important treasure. Since the sky-swallowing technique could shake the exorcist mirror, he could use the sky-swallowing technique to control the exorcist mirror when he was about to leave. Then they would leave together. He believed that this was a workable method. He was relieved. He did not expect to have such a huge gain and complete his first goal not long after entering the Langya Pavilion. He was about to cancel the sky-swallowing technique when he realized that the black light suddenly flashed. Even the Langya Pavilion trembled. The space seemed to have become unstable. What's going on? He hurriedly looked around. The place seemed to be on the verge of collapse, as if there was an earthquake. The commotion was so huge that it made one tremble in fear. He did not expect this change, but he vaguely guessed that it was related to the sky-swallowing technique. Indeed, the sky-swallowing technique was not an ordinary spell. The sky-swallowing technique was equivalent to the spatial door of the heavenly realm, and the world inside the dragon seal was equivalent to another small world. This world was not as stable as he had imagined. Otherwise, it would not be so small. The heavenly realm was a bigger world than this world. The strength of the energy contained in the two could not be compared at all. The black hole was created here, and it had a violent impact on this space. In the past, he had used the sky-swallowing technique in the dragon seal to absorb the souls of the dragon slayers, but there were no such strong side effects. That was then, and this was now. At that time, his sky-swallowing technique was not as powerful as it was now. Now he had cultivated the sky-swallowing technique to the highest realm, sky-swallowing. Now that he used the sky-swallowing technique in the dragon seal, the impact on this space was very strong. It made the Langya Pavilion on the verge of collapse. This world seemed to be about to collapse. The dragon seal was the holy land of every dragon. It was equivalent to the spiritual source. It was a huge treasure. If the dragon seal collapsed, it would be a devastating blow to the dragon race. Although Tang Zheng did not think so much, he realized that something was wrong. This was definitely related to his sky-swallowing technique, so he had to stop it immediately. Just as he had this thought, the power of the sky-swallowing technique increased wildly. The light that enveloped the exorcist mirror suddenly flashed, and was sucked into the black hole with a whoosh, disappearing. Then, Tang Zheng had time to withdraw the sky-swallowing technique, and make the black hole disappear. However, the fourth floor had already become empty, and there was no longer the exorcist mirror. The Langya Pavilion stopped trembling, and everything returned to normal. However, Tang Zheng widened his eyes and looked around. He did not know whether to laugh or cry at this scene. His sudden idea had almost caused a disaster. Moreover, how was he going to end this? If the exorcist mirror was sucked into the heavenly realm, wouldn't it turn into a wisp of energy? All his previous efforts would be wasted. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat, and a strange expression appeared on his face. The heavenly realm was connected to his mind, and any movement in the heavenly realm would appear in his heart. Therefore, he immediately discovered the abnormality in the heavenly realm. After a wave of fluctuations appeared in the heavenly realm, the exorcist mirror actually appeared out of thin air in the sky. It floated gently like a cloud, and did not turn into a wisp of energy as he was worried. The exorcist mirror was intact. He was overjoyed and could not help but cheer. Ha ha ha, the exorcist mirror is actually fine. The heavens are really helping me. This was really full of twists and turns. His heart was like riding a roller coaster, reaching the peak one moment, and then falling into the abyss the next. His good mood did not last long, and his expression instantly froze. This was because once the exorcist mirror entered the heavenly realm, he would not be able to take it out. The heavenly realm could only be entered and not exited. It had always been like this. Although the exorcist mirror was intact, wouldn't it be useless? Wouldn't all his previous efforts be wasted? For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1625. I can't use the exorcist mirror. Time is of the essence, so I'll deal with the other matter first. He looked around, carefully sizing up the space of the Langia Pavilion. There was a limit to how long every dragon could stay in the Langia Pavilion, and they could only enter once a month. He wanted to see if he could break this limit. This is also a space, but it's not as vast and complicated as the human world or the sky beyond heaven. Of course, it's also not comparable to the heavenly realm. I'm well versed in the laws of space, so it's not impossible for me to break this limit. He was full of confidence, so he simply closed his eyes and operated the laws of space, quietly feeling the wonders of this world. Only the dragon race could reach this world, and they had to go through the dragon mark on their forehead. This was the peculiarity of this world, a feature that other worlds didn't have. This showed that when the dragon race's ancestors created this world, they had considered it and made the corresponding preparations. It was completely different from other worlds. Other worlds could be passed through the spatial door, but this didn't apply to the dragon seal world. He gently touched his forehead, and his thoughts moved. He was afraid that the spatial door of this world had fused with the dragon race's dragon mark, so only the dragon race could open it. His guess wasn't wrong. Back then, the dragon race's ancestors had spent a lot of effort to create the dragon seal world, creating a top-secret world for the dragon race. Naturally, they wouldn't allow outsiders to enter, so they specially set up various restrictions and thresholds for the dragon seal world. Tang Zheng was well versed in the laws of space, and had rich experience in passing through space. Furthermore, his cultivation was profound, and he was also from the dragon race. When he calmed down and used his divine ability, he gradually felt the mysteries of the dragon seal world. Tang Zheng discovered that his divine sense was drifting, merging into the darkness. His divine sense spread out in the darkness, as if he was searching for something. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack, with little hope. He couldn't completely explain what was going on, but he had a premonition that this was definitely the effect of the laws of space. Therefore, he didn't deliberately stop it, but allowed this feeling to spread. He was like a ghost, drifting in the darkness, looking for the light of dawn. He didn't know how long this feeling lasted. Finally, the light of dawn appeared. This wasn't true light, but a mysterious connection that appeared between him and the dragon seal world. He was overjoyed as if he had obtained a treasure. His divine sense extended endlessly at an extremely fast speed from the Langia Pavilion to the outside. The area shrouded by the thick fog became clear to him. It was completely displayed in his mind. Not long after, his divine sense arrived at the inverted Langia Pavilion. In a short period of time, he toured the entire Dragonmark world. This was something that could never have been done in the past. However, he now had some kind of mysterious connection with the Dragon Seal world. All of this was easy and natural. Although he couldn't reach the level of knowing the heaven realm like the back of his hand, he could still sense the other worlds. He suddenly had a flash of inspiration. All of this must be the effect of the space laws. The space laws resonated with the space laws, resulting in such an effect. However, it was not easy to achieve this. Perhaps there were many factors that contributed to his success, and one of them was the advantage of the Dragon Clan. Could this situation be transferred to other places? For example, the human world. If he could completely control everything in the world and travel the world spiritually, wouldn't nothing be able to escape his eyes? The so-called clairvoyant eyes and clairvoyant ears were far inferior to this point. Of course, it wasn't easy to achieve this, but he immediately thought of another point. Heavenly chess. With heavenly chess, wouldn't everything be under his control? If he combined heavenly chess with his space laws, wouldn't it produce a miraculous chemical reaction and complete his plan? This was something that Ji Wuxiang couldn't do back then, because he didn't understand the space laws. However, Tang Zheng was well versed in the space laws and had the experience of traversing through space. It was like adding wings to a tiger. How could he miss such a good opportunity? He had never thought of this before. Now that he had a flash of inspiration, he thought of this point. He was extremely excited and wanted to test it out immediately. With great difficulty, He suppressed the excitement in his heart and calmed himself down. He focused his attention on the Dragon Seal world, strengthening and consolidating this connection. In the past, he had always been forced to leave the Dragon Seal world. Now that he had this mysterious connection, he had a plan in his heart, and decided to test it out to see if he could leave on his own. Whoosh! He took a deep breath and activated his divine ability, pushing his comprehension of the laws of space to the extreme. The air around him became blurry, rippling like water. Puff! He disappeared. In the next second, he left the Langia pavilion, and his divine sense returned to his body. He suddenly opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling with a burning gaze. The corner of his mouth rippled with joy, and his hands involuntarily clenched into fists. I finally took the initiative to leave the Dragon Seal world. This was equivalent to completing half a step. Next, he would have to go in again. This would be more difficult than coming out, because he had to break the original restrictions of the Dragon Seal world. He didn't stop and used his divine ability once again. The dragon mark on his forehead immediately blossomed with a resplendent golden light. His divine sense didn't immediately enter the Langia pavilion, but established a connection with the Dragon Seal world. Only when this connection was strong to a certain level could he enter again. He continuously activated the space laws, and the power in his body was like a surging river, violently flowing through his meridians. Whoosh! 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 The surrounding air rippled, as if there were waves splashing. His expression was solemn to the extreme. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists, causing his veins to bulge. Golden light slowly spread from his forehead to his entire body. Not long after, his entire body was bathed in golden light. Pieces of golden scales appeared on the surface of his body, like a layer of golden armor. He appeared incomparably awe-inspiring. Roar! Suddenly he raised his head, and a dragon's roar burst out from his throat, resounding throughout the villa. On New Year's Eve, it instantly attracted everyone's attention. Fortunately, there was a restriction in this place. Otherwise, the dragon's roar would have definitely spread throughout the entire capital, and who knows how much of a commotion it would cause. Golden light flickered intensely. Tianqianzi and the rest had already rushed in after hearing the roar. They only saw a dazzling golden light filling the entire room, making them unable to look straight at it. Tang Zheng was coincidentally in the center of the golden light. Whoosh! Chapter 1626. Tang Zheng's eyes widened as he looked at himself in disbelief. He stretched out his 5 fingers and groped around his body a few times, confirming that this was his real body. He raised his head and looked over. The Langia pavilion was quietly standing in front of him. Damn it! How did my physical body come in here? Although he thought that he would succeed, he never thought that his physical body would enter the Dragon Seal world instead of his divine sense. Whoosh! He let out a long breath and accepted this reality. Since he was already here, he might as well make the best of it. Since his physical body could enter, he would see what benefits there were. Hidden profound sword. He shouted loudly as a dazzling sword light burst out from his body. It soared into the sky and floated above his head. His gaze revealed a trace of surprise as he stared at the hidden profound sword. He never thought that once his physical body entered, he would be able to summon the hidden profound sword. After all, the hidden profound sword had fused with his physical body, so he also brought his magic treasure in. This way, if I encounter a dragon slayer in the Dragon Seal world, my battle strength will increase by a lot. With a wave of his hand, the hidden profound sword once again fused into his body and disappeared. The corner of his mouth hooked up into a smile as he urged the law of space. Everything became subtle again as ripples appeared in the air. Whoosh! He disappeared from the Dragon Seal world. In the next second, he appeared in front of Tianqianzi and the others. Everyone was bewildered as they watched Tang Zheng disappear in front of them. Before they could figure out what was going on, a figure suddenly flashed, and Tang Zheng appeared again. He was no different from before, but the golden scales had already disappeared. Everyone was shocked as they stared at him, their eyes filled with question marks. What happened to his body? Looking at everyone's gaze, Tang Zheng smiled indifferently and said, "Don't worry, everyone can disperse." Regarding the Dragon Seal world, other than the Dragon Clan, it was indeed inappropriate to tell others too much. Moreover, no one else could help with this matter. Everyone was bewildered as they gradually dispersed. Only Tang Zheng was left in the huge room. He had not had the time to digest his gains, especially thinking of a way to take the Exorcist mirror out of the Heaven Realm. This was a top priority. With a thought, his consciousness entered the Heaven Realm and surrounded the Exorcist mirror tightly. Wang. The Exorcist mirror began to vibrate as if it had sensed his consciousness. The Exorcist mirror didn't move at all when it was in the Langya Pavilion. Now that I've left the Langya Pavilion, it reacted to my divine sense. Fine, then I'll see if I can help you leave the Heaven Realm. He had absolute control over the Heaven Realm. Therefore, with just a thought, the Exorcist mirror flew up with a whoosh and soared into the sky, trying to break through the invisible spatial restraints and leave the Heaven Realm. Bang! With a loud bang, the Exorcist mirror collided with an invisible barrier. It shook violently but did not leave the Heaven Realm. Sigh. He let out a long sigh. It seemed that he had been too optimistic and had underestimated the Heaven Realm. However, he did not give up. He thought to himself, once the Exorcist mirror left the Heaven Realm, it would open up the connection between the Heaven Realm and the outside world. In the future, the Heaven Realm would no longer be a useless place. Instead, it would be able to play a huge role. Therefore, he quickly calmed his mind and made a comeback. This time, he did not use brute force. Instead, he used the spatial law. In the past, he had tried to let the things in the Heaven Realm leave. However, that invisible barrier made him helpless. He did not know if he would succeed this time. As soon as he used the spatial law, his connection with the heaven beyond heaven became even closer. He was originally the master of the heaven beyond heaven. At this moment, his consciousness and the heaven beyond heaven became one. It was as if he was the heaven beyond heaven, and the heaven beyond heaven was him. This feeling was very mysterious and unprecedented. He was enlightened. His consciousness once again wrapped tightly around the Exorcist mirror. The Exorcist mirror immediately emitted a ball of light. It did not shake as violently as before. Swoosh! A dazzling light shot out from the Exorcist mirror. It descended from the sky and illuminated the heaven and earth of the Heaven Realm. All the plants and trees were enveloped by this light. Even the tree of life was no exception. Wisps of black gas slowly rose from all living things. It was like smoke rising in spirals. It was exceptionally spectacular. Tang Zheng was shocked. He looked at this scene in disbelief. Of course, he recognized this scene. This was the process of the Exorcist mirror expelling the inner demons. All living things had spirits, and all living things also had inner demons. The Exorcist mirror had directly expelled all the inner demons in the Heaven Realm. Immediately, the tree of life also glowed. It actually grew a little taller. Wow, the effect is so good. He could not wait to get the Exorcist mirror out of the Heaven Realm. He quickly focused and held his breath. The spatial law was used to the extreme. Buzz. The surrounding air vibrated violently. Ripples spread in all directions. It was a spectacular sight. Is it going to succeed? He seemed to have sensed something. Whoosh. A stream of air spun rapidly in the sky and gradually turned into a black vortex. It was very similar to the scene when he used the sky-swallowing skill. This black vortex quickly turned into a black hole. The black light gradually wrapped around the Exorcist mirror. The light on the Exorcist mirror was also swallowed by the black hole. Gradually, the Exorcist mirror disappeared into the black hole. Whoosh! The Exorcist mirror completely disappeared and left the Heaven Realm. Tang Zheng was dumbfounded. He never thought that his sudden idea would actually succeed. He had tried so many times and failed, but this time he actually succeeded. It seemed that he had a deeper understanding of the spatial law after traveling through space several times. All of this had benefited him greatly. In addition, his cultivation had also increased by a lot. This was also a big help. Both were indispensable. Only then would he have a chance to succeed in one go. He was wild with joy. In this way, wouldn't the Heaven Realm and the outside world be connected? Once this passage was opened, the benefits to him would be self-evident. However, he did not let the ecstasy go to his head. He quickly retracted his divine sense and found that the exorcist's mirror was quietly placed beside him. The exorcist's mirror had successfully come out of the heaven realm. The passage between the two worlds had been successfully opened. He waved his fist a few times, unable to hide his joy. He walked around the exorcist's mirror. The more he looked at it, the happier he became. He could not help but mutter to himself, "The exorcist's mirror is a magic treasure, and a sacred tool at that. Its function is to expel inner demons. This is something that other magic treasures can't compare to. The exorcist mirror is an ownerless item. How can I recklessly waste a heavenly treasure? If I drip blood on it to recognize it as its master, the effect of expelling inner demons might be even better." He became restless. He stretched out his finger and forced a drop of blood out from his fingertip. Pa! The drop of blood landed on the exorcist mirror and immediately rippled with a bloody light. The blood turned into thousands of wisps and swam through the entire exorcist mirror. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1627. Blood covered the exorcist mirror, especially on the surface of the mirror. It was like a spider web made of blood, leaving a deep impression. Suddenly, with a flash of blood light, the blood light completely merged into the mirror and disappeared. Master recognition successful. The exorcist mirror had become Tang Zheng's magic treasure. Master. The exorcist mirror's voice sounded in Tang Zheng's mind. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth hooked up into a faint smile, and asked straightforwardly, "Exorcist mirror, other than exorcising inner demons, what other effects do you have?" "Master, not only can I exorcise inner demons, I can also seduce inner demons." The exorcist mirror replied methodically. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. He was overjoyed. He had originally asked casually, but he did not expect there to be such a pleasant surprise. Not only could the exorcist mirror expel inner demons, it could also seduce inner demons. As a cultivator, he knew very well what it meant to seduce inner demons. If he was facing an enemy, once the enemy's inner demons were seduced, their fighting strength would decrease sharply, and they would go berserk. How could they still have the strength to fight? Therefore, when facing an enemy, the exorcist mirror could play a pivotal role. Ha ha ha, the heavens are helping me, to actually let me have such a sacred tool. Tang Zheng laughed loudly. Originally, I wanted to return it to Langya, but now it seems that I can't do that. In front of a strong enemy, the exorcist mirror can help me. If I return it, it would be a waste of God's gift. Even if there are dragons who need to exorcise inner demons, I can personally exorcise inner demons for them in the future. He nodded to himself and made his decision. He gently stroked the exorcist mirror with his finger. Ripples appeared on the surface of the exorcist mirror. Then, with a flash of light, the exorcist mirror disappeared into the Sumeru world. Back then, Yi Meiyu's traceless dream spell could create illusions and confuse people's minds. It had many similarities to the exorcist mirror's effects, but she definitely couldn't be compared to the exorcist mirror. If I see Yi Meiyu again, I will definitely let her have a taste of the exorcist mirror. The New Year's bell had already rung. They came to the front of the bonfire in the villa. Looking at the lively scene of singing and dancing, he did not disturb them. It was rare for the sorcerer tribe to have time to relax. These few days they would treat it as a vacation. What awaited the sorcerer tribe was even more brutal training and cultivation. After the spring festival, he would personally use the exorcism mirror to expel their inner demons. Then he would refine many pills to rapidly increase their cultivation. As for the heaven realm, although Tang Zheng had already opened up a passage between the two realms, it was still unknown whether people could safely pass through the passage, and whether they would be turned into waves of energy like before. Therefore, for the sake of safety, he would not use the lives of the witches for experiments. He would only make a decision when he used the sky-swallowing technique to deal with enemies in the future, and see if the enemies were sucked into the heaven realm and turned into energy. He looked at the window of Mu Hongyan's room, and a bitter smile appeared on his face. It was so close, but because of Nana, she did not dare to sneak in through the window. Nana, this little girl, was getting older and smarter. There were still many things that he had to avoid from her. How could he teach a child the wrong thing? He took a deep breath and could only endure it as he returned to his bedroom. He lay on the bed and looked at the ceiling. There was a restless aura in his heart that kept stirring. Ever since it was past 12 o'clock and the new year had arrived, this restless feeling had gradually become stronger. At first, he did not pay much attention to it, but now that it was late at night, this feeling was especially clear. He tossed and turned, unable to sleep, and muttered in his heart, "What's wrong with me? Could it be that I really can't sleep without a woman? I'm not that kind of man." He shook his head and hurriedly channeled his energy to suppress the restless flames in his heart. He fell asleep in a daze. Late at night, Hong. A muffled sound came from Tang Zheng's body. This sound was not loud, as if something had broken. Then his body immediately released a blazing aura. It was as if a wave of heat had been aroused from his body, but he did not wake up. He still had his eyes closed, and there was a pained expression on his face. Gotcha. Suddenly, the door lock was gently twisted. A figure flashed into the room at the door and ran straight to Tang Zheng, who was on the bed. "You little rascal, in the middle of the night you still dare to lure people to sneak in. See how I deal with you later." It turned out that Mu Hongyan had taken advantage of the time when Nana was asleep to sneak into Tang Zheng's room. But Tang Zheng did not wake up. It was as if he had turned a deaf ear to her. Still pretending to be asleep. Mu Hongyan wrinkled her delicate nose. She was very clear that with Tang Zheng's cultivation, she would definitely not be able to escape his detection as soon as she entered the room. But he still did not move. It was obvious that he was doing it deliberately. She simply tiptoed to the bedside and glanced at Tang Zheng, who had his eyes closed. A mischievous smile appeared on her lips. She tiptoed and directly pounced on him. Bang! The two of them crashed into each other. Mu Hongyan thought that he would catch her, but she did not expect that she would crash into him heavily. This was greatly beyond her expectations. She did not care about the pain in her body. She greeted Tang Zheng's chest with her fist and complained. "Who told you to be naughty? You didn't catch me. Now you hurt me." Suddenly, her voice came to an abrupt stop, as if someone had choked her throat. Her eyes became strange. She lowered her head and stared at Tang Zheng. "Ah!" she exclaimed, and her face suddenly changed. She hurriedly hugged Tang Zheng's head and shouted, "Tang Zheng, what's wrong with you? Wake up quickly." But Tang Zheng did not move at all. He was like a piece of wood. No matter how she shook him, he did not respond at all. Now she knew that things were serious. The two of them had not been separated for long before he became like this. No one would have thought that he would be like this. As for his specific situation, she was even more confused. So she hurriedly grabbed Tang Zheng's wrist and tried to use her qi to explore his specific situation. Bang! However, a huge rebounding force hit her hand directly. As if she had been electrocuted, she actually flew off the bed and almost fell to the ground. She awkwardly stood firm and stared blankly at the bed. Tang Zheng still did not move, as if all of this had nothing to do with him, as if he was not involved. She had never seen him like this. Could it be that he was sick? Could cultivators get sick? She could not be sure. She had never heard of it. Could it be that the pure yang energy had erupted? She had an idea and another idea came up, but she immediately rejected it. Because she knew very well what kind of scene the eruption of pure yang energy was like. It was definitely not like this wooden block. If she was lying on top of him, he would have already taken action and absorbed the purine energy. Chapter 1628. Not long after, Tang Zheng's room was filled with people. The ordinary witch clan did not know that he had fallen ill. Only a few core members knew about it. Everyone watched over him worriedly. They had tried all sorts of methods, but they still did not succeed in waking him up. All of their faces were filled with worry. Heaven Monk was the one with the highest cultivation and the most experience. He sat at the head of the bed and took Tang Zheng's pulse, his fingers pressing down on his pulse. Although he was mentally prepared, a strong rebounding force almost sent him flying. His face immediately became serious and gloomy. He stared at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze, as if he wanted to see through him completely. However, it was all in vain. Tang Zheng was like an unfathomable ocean. His eyesight and knowledge were not enough to completely see through him. However, he was still stronger than the others. He gradually saw some clues. After pondering for a long time, he finally released his fingers with lingering fear. The others all talked at once and asked worriedly, "How is he?" Looking at the pairs of worried eyes, Tian Chanzi sighed faintly and said, "There is an extremely huge power in his body, like a volcano, temporarily suppressed, but it can erupt at any time. At that time, I'm afraid it won't be such a quiet scene." Could it be the pure yang force? Mu Hongyan's heart skipped a beat, and she blurted out, "This." Tian Chanzi pinched his beard and muttered to himself. Mu Hongyan seemed to be deep in thought, and said, "But this is completely different from when he used to release the pure yang force." This was precisely where she was hesitant. In fact, she was very familiar with the way Tang Zheng used the pure yang force, and it was completely different from the way it was now. At that time, his body was like a piece of soldering iron, fiery red and scalding. But now, although his body temperature had risen a little, it was far from reaching that state. Suddenly Tang Dahai, who had been silent all this time, slapped his thigh and anxiously shouted, "Crap, I'm afraid I made a mistake." "What's the matter?" The others were shocked, and they couldn't care less about the shock in their hearts as they hurriedly asked. Tang Dahai said with incomparable regret, "Everyone says that little Zheng's pure yang energy exploded on his 20th birthday. I have always treated the day I picked him up as his birthday, but in fact he was actually born before that. As for how much earlier, I don't know." After Tang Dahai finished speaking, he squatted on the ground and hugged his head with both hands. He was in intense pain. Everyone suddenly realized that there was indeed such a possibility. Mu Hongyan muttered to herself, "His birthday is on the 18th of the 3rd month of the lunar calendar. If it was earlier, I'm afraid it would be in February, or even the 1st month. Could it be that the power of pure yang really broke out?" Mu Hongyan was not entirely correct. Tang Zheng's actual birth date was not the 1st lunar month, but the 2nd day of the 2nd lunar month, the day when the dragon raised its head. As for Tang Zheng's situation, it was indeed a sign of the eruption of pure yang energy, but it was completely different from the usual eruption of pure yang energy. This was because the two of them could not be mentioned in the same breath. The pure yang energy was supposed to erupt on his birthday, but it was brought forward. This had to be blamed on the Heaven and Earth Palace. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai entered the Heaven and Earth Palace at the same time. Cultivating in the Heaven and Earth Palace was twice the result with half the effort. Tang Zheng thought that the time in the Heaven and Earth Palace had slowed down and stagnated. In fact, he had completely guessed wrong. The time in the Heaven and Earth Palace had not slowed down, but rather sped up. Time flew by like a shuttle. A day outside was a year, 10 years, or even 100 years inside. The ancestor was not wrong. This was the truth of the Heaven and Earth Palace. However, this was also relative. When one was inside, one would not feel the passage of time. Although Tang Zheng had obtained a huge harvest in the Heaven and Earth Palace, the Heaven and Earth Palace had also affected his body and the power of pure yang, causing the power of pure yang to erupt earlier. As soon as the New Year's bell rang, all of these effects appeared. The power of pure yang became restless, but it was completely different from before. His pure yang energy did not erupt like a volcano. Instead, it accumulated bit by bit. His body was like a volcano, and his pure yang energy was like blazing hot magma. It had been slowly accumulating until it reached its peak. Only then would it erupt. This was different from the previous eruptions of pure yang energy. Even Mu Hongyan had been deceived. Mu Hongyan had accidentally revealed a portion of the truth. She looked worriedly at Tang Zheng. Tian Chanzi stroked his beard thoughtfully. He muttered to himself, "Could it be that the power of pure yang has really erupted ahead of time? That would be terrible." Since ancient times, there had been a few celestials who had possessed the 9-yang saint body. However, many of them had not passed through the crisis of 20 years old. Most of them had died from their bodies exploding. Although Tang Zheng's strength was already extremely great, it was still unknown whether or not he would be able to pass through this crisis. Tian Chanzi's eyelids immediately drooped. The worry in his eyes was self-evident. "Everyone retreat." Tian Chanzi waved his hand and gave the order. Whether or not Tang Zheng's pure yang energy had erupted, the truth would be revealed once they tested it out. The others began to retreat one after another. Most of them understood Tian Chanzi's intention. Tian Chanzi looked at Mu Hongyan, who was tightly holding Tang Zheng's hand, and warned, "I'll leave this to you. You have to figure out whether or not his pure yang energy has really erupted." Mu Hongyan raised her head and looked at the empty room. Then she looked at Tang Zheng in her arms and heavily nodded. "I understand." She was very clear about the heavy burden on her shoulders. If she could confirm that Tang Zheng's pure yang energy had erupted, then the most troublesome problem would be dispelling it. There was only one way, and it was not something she could do alone. Combined with the previous eruptions of pure yang energy, this one was especially strange and serious. Perhaps dispelling it would not be an easy matter. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many Skywalkers in history who died because of this. She took a deep breath and gently undressed Tang Zheng. After a while, the two of them were naked. They were very familiar with this kind of thing, but now Tang Zheng was like a block of wood, so she had to lead everything. She blushed and quickly calmed her mind. Her fingers gently stroked every inch of Tang Zheng's skin. Although he was like a block of wood, his body's functions were not affected at all. She was no longer a 17 or 18-year-old girl. After overcoming the initial shyness, she became a lot bolder. The temperature in the room gradually rose, and a trace of strange aura filled the room. There was also a slight shameful sound, which was teasing Mu Hongyan's heartstrings. Her breath involuntarily quickened. But she didn't forget her task. She was keenly aware of a trace of change, and this change was getting more and more intense. In the end, she almost didn't need to spend any effort to sense it. Chapter 1629. Mu Hongyan was dumbfounded by the endless flow of pure yin energy. It was as if all the strength in her body had been sucked away as she lay limply on Tang Zheng's chest. She supported herself with her arms and climbed down from Tang Zheng's body. Her legs were weak and she staggered, almost falling to the ground. She patted her chest heavily a few times before she finally calmed down. She looked at Tang Zheng in bewilderment, and fear lingered in her heart. If I hadn't left, would the pure yin energy have been completely absorbed by him? She didn't dare to continue thinking about it because if it was really as she thought, then her life would be in danger. She couldn't care less about her naked body as she stared at Tang Zheng. She was already sure of one thing, and that was that he really had erupted with pure yang energy. Although it looked different from before, in fact there wasn't much change in essence. It was just that it was hidden by the appearance, so for a while no one noticed it. What should she do? She couldn't help but frown as she looked at Tang Zheng with worry. After a long time, she finally recovered a bit of strength, but she didn't dare to test it out again. She quickly put on her clothes and also dressed Tang Zheng neatly. He was still like a piece of wood, allowing her to do as she pleased. She turned her head and gave him a deep look before resolutely walking out. Outside the room, many people crowded together and looked at her curiously. Her face was dignified as she said in a deep voice, "He really did erupt with pure yang energy." Ah! Cries of alarm rang out. Many people still had hope in their hearts, but after hearing this sentence, they knew that their hopes were dashed. The cruel reality was bloody in front of them. Didn't he also erupt with pure yang energy before? Once there is pure yin energy to balance it, he can turn danger into safety. Now you. Tang Dahai looked at Mu Hongyan and said. Mu Hongyan lowered her head and said embarrassedly, "My pure yin energy is not enough to balance his pure yang energy." Without waiting for the others to react, Tian Chanzi said in a deep voice, "She is right. Tang Zheng's situation this time is different from the past. He is at the final juncture. The pure yang energy that the nine yang saint body has accumulated for 20 years has completely erupted. This isn't something that can be resolved with just a little bit of pure yin energy. If we act rashly, I'm afraid that the rescuer will suffer quite a bit of harm, so we can't be careless." Mu Hongyan nodded to herself, admitting that what Tian Chanzi said was true. If she hadn't stopped in time, she would have suffered a lot of injuries. As soon as he said this, everyone looked at Mu Hongyan. Seeing her expression of deep understanding, everyone immediately knew that Tian Chanzi was not lying. Immediately, All of them frowned, not knowing what to do. Tang Dahai was out of his wits as he worriedly asked, "Then what should we do?" Tian Chanzi muttered to himself for a while, then decisively said, "First call back the other girls and temporarily deal with it to save his life. As for the final solution, I'm afraid that it will fall on the Empyrean Fairy." The Empyrean Fairy had the 9 saint body, so this was the best way to balance Tang Zheng's 9 saint body. Naturally, Tian Chanzi thought of her first. Mu Hongyan's heart skipped a beat as she understood his thoughts. She worriedly said, "But the Empyrean Fairy's status is noble, so she might not agree." Tian Chanzi's lips curled into a meaningful smile and said, "Have you all forgotten what the Emperor of Heaven said? The Emperor of Heaven has the intention of bringing these two together. Once we agree to this, I believe that the Emperor of Heaven will definitely agree. The parents' orders, the matchmaker's words. As the Emperor of Heaven's daughter, the Empyrean Fairy will naturally not go against the Emperor of Heaven's wishes, so there will be no obstacles in this matter." Mu Hongyan was suddenly stunned as she instantly understood Tian Chanzi's words. It was indeed reasonable, and she could not help but feel a trace of sourness in her heart. But she immediately restrained this subtle thought. Her status was special, and could not be compared to others. Although she was already by Tang Zheng's side, if she wanted a status, it would be extremely difficult. After all, not to mention the secular world's view, there was still Nana between the two of them. This was an insurmountable mountain. She was not sure how it would hurt Nana, so she would rather maintain this semi-public method. She did not need to fight for a status, but what about the others? None of the others were easy to deal with, and each and every one of them hung their hearts on Tang Zheng. Would they be willing to not have a status? Would they agree to just watch as this status was handed over to someone else? Mu Hongyan could not answer for all of them. Perhaps some would be willing, but there would definitely be some who would not. Then how would she decide? She was very smart, but she could not think of a solution. Tang Dahai did not have such thoughts. He immediately ordered someone to contact the other girls, and he hurriedly left to personally make the call. Tian Chanzi's eyes were like torches as he thoughtfully looked at Mu Hongyan. He patted her shoulder and said earnestly, "In this kind of life and death situation, we must sacrifice something in exchange for his life. I hope you can understand." Mu Hongyan's lips curled into a bitter smile as she said, "Of course I can understand, but the others may not. Don't worry, in order to save Tang Zheng, I believe they will be deeply righteous." Tian Chanzi said stubbornly. The phone was quickly connected to several girls. Originally, they were still immersed in the joy of the Spring Festival, but upon hearing the bad news, they were all shocked and their good mood was destroyed. Then, they used various methods to rush to the capital without stopping. Feng Shishir and Lu Qingmei were far away in ordinary balance. They had to cross more than half of the country to reach the capital. If they flew overnight, the speed would not be too fast, and it would be dangerous. Therefore, she decided to take an early morning plane to the capital. Yi Dingdang, Wu and Li Xiaotian were far away in Dianan, farther than Feng Shishir. They could only take a plane, and the only one left was Linger. In fact, no one told her. After her Spring Festival Gala debut, she declined other people's invitations and interviews, and then rushed home without stopping. She wanted to hear Tang Zheng's evaluation of her the most. The biggest reason why she went on the Spring Festival Gala was to let Tang Zheng personally watch her performance on TV. Unfortunately, Tang Zheng did not have time to take a look. Linger suddenly pushed open the door, and saw Tang Zheng, who was surrounded in the middle of the crowd. She turned pale with fright and flew over, exclaiming, "Master, what happened to you?" Linger's body and mind were all tied to one person, and this person was Tang Zheng. If there was no Tang Zheng, she was afraid that she would not know who to stew and eat, let alone transform into a human and become a star. Everything she had was given to her by Tang Zheng, so she was naturally worried about him the most. "Linger, why are you back so early?" Mu Hongyan suppressed the grief in her heart and asked. Linger tightly grasped her master's hand, and raised her head to look at Mu Hongyan. Her eyes were already red, and her tears were like pearls falling down as she said, "How did master become like this?" Mu Hongyan faintly said. His pure young energy erupted. Chapter 1630. I will dissolve the pure yang energy for master. Seeing Linger making a solemn vow without any hesitation, everyone was shocked and looked at her blankly. In everyone's subconscious mind, they did not put Linger in the list of people who would dissolve the pure yang energy, so when they heard this, they were all at a loss. Linger anxiously asked, "Why, is there anything wrong? Master is already at a critical juncture. My life belongs to Master, so I should do my part." The others did not know what to say. As a woman, Mu Hongyan looked at everyone and quickly pulled Linger's hand and whispered, "Linger, come with me." Saying that, she pulled her to the side and whispered to her. Everyone looked at this scene with mixed feelings, but when they saw Tangzheng, who was motionless on the bed, they all frowned. "Linger, do you know what this means?" Mu Hongyan found it hard to say. After all, in everyone's impression, Linger was as clear as water that flowed down from an ice mountain, without the slightest impurity. Telling her about the matters between men and women was really blasphemous to her. Mu Hongyan knew that this heavy burden could only be carried by herself, otherwise, with a room full of men, she could not tell a little girl such private matters. Linger stared at Mu Hongyan with her clear eyes, the corners of her mouth hooked up into a playful smile, and said, "Sister Mu, what do you mean?" Mu Hongyan secretly sighed. This silly girl was too naive, taking the initiative to volunteer, but did not understand the meaning behind it. She was anxious in her heart, deliberating over her words for a long time before saying, "I am asking if you know what to do to dissolve the pure yang energy." "Do what?" "This thing." Mu Hongyan was stumped by the question. This kind of private matter was hard to say in broad daylight. Looking at Mu Hongyan's predicament, Linger covered her mouth and chuckled. Mu Hongyan's almond eyes widened. How could she not understand that she was being teased? Immediately, she was extremely embarrassed. Pretending to be angry, she said coquettishly, "Ling, you actually learned bad things and know how to tease me." "Sister Mu, I don't dare." Linger immediately retracted her smile and said with a serious face, "Sister Mu, don't treat me like a 3-year-old child. I have lived for hundreds of years. Although I have not been in human form for long, how can I not know anything in the entertainment circle? Of course, I know what to do to dissolve the pure yang energy." Returning to the main topic, Mu Hongyan put away her complicated thoughts and said in a deep voice, "Since you know what it means, are you still willing to do this?" Linger's expression was firm, not allowing for the slightest doubt, and said resolutely, "Of course, I am willing." Mu Hongyan was shocked by her decisiveness, and said in bewilderment, "But you have to be clear, this is not an act. I know you have always remembered his kindness, but there are many ways to repay a debt. There is no need to do this. This is the most important thing to a woman." Linger turned her head to look at Tangzheng, her expression fluctuating, and said, "Repay a debt of gratitude? I am indeed grateful to Master. If not for him, I am afraid I would not be in this world, let alone have such a wonderful life." Mu Hongyan hurriedly nodded her head. This was what she meant. If she took this step to repay a debt of gratitude, it would be unfair to Linger. If Tangzheng woke up and knew about this, he would not be able to accept it, and would even secretly blame himself. For the person she loved, Mu Hongyan naturally had the responsibility and obligation to avoid unnecessary tragedies. Linger's eyes gradually revealed deep affection, and the corner of her mouth rippled with a mysterious smile. She said, "At first, I was grateful to Master, so I recognized him as my master. But later on, Master always cared for me and loved me. I am also a woman, and I have a woman's heart. Moreover, seeing the other sisters and Master together, I have a strong desire in my heart. I also want to be together with Master." "What?" Mu Hongyan was shocked, and could not help but cry out. She was deeply shocked. She had never thought that such an innocent and cute girl would say such words. This was not an oath of eternal love, nor was it a solemn vow, but when it came from Ling-er's mouth, it seemed to have the power of 1,000 caddies, making people feel deep respect for her. When the others heard Mu Hongyan's cry of surprise, they all turned their heads in surprise, not knowing what the two were talking about to cause such a strong reaction. After a long time, Mu Hongyan calmed down the waves in her heart, and couldn't help but look at Linger in a new light. She hesitantly asked, "Linger, you also like him?" Linger's face revealed a girl's unique shyness, and she lowered her head, like a mimosa plant drooping down, making others want to love her tenderly, and gently nodded. Mu Hongyan faintly sighed, and turned her head to look at Tang Zheng, and said, "This little brat really does not know what kind of good fortune he has cultivated in his previous life, to have so many beautiful women fall in love with him. Who knows how many men in the world would be jealous of him?" "Linger, then from now on you are his woman?" Mu Hongyan asked again. Linger raised her head, her face brimming with happiness and pride, and said, "To be able to become Master's woman, this is the most fortunate thing, and also the most glorious thing." Mu Hongyan was speechless, and couldn't think of a single word to refute. After mulling over it for a long time, she was finally convinced. Indeed, as Linger said, this was the greatest happiness and glory for a woman. As Tang Zheng's woman, she felt it the most deeply, and was also one of the people with the most right to speak. Although he had many romantic affairs, they were all from his heart, and he did not favor one and discriminate against another. Moreover, many times it was the women who took the initiative, and he became the passive party. He was like a huge magnet, firmly attracting these women, crying for him, laughing for him, infatuated with him, and falling in love with him. Seeing Mu Hongyan not speaking for a long time, Linger asked, "Big Sister Mu, am I right?" Mu Hongyan's eyes also became firm, and she nodded heavily. "You are right." Linger's mouth hooked up into a smile that was even more charming. Mu Hongyan once again held Linger's hand, and walked with firm steps towards Tang Zheng. When the others saw this, they all signaled with their eyes. Mu Hongyan lightly nodded, and everyone instantly understood. Linger had already steeled her heart, and was willing to sacrifice herself to save others. Tang Dahai was someone who had witnessed Linger's growth, and sincerely said, "Linger grandfather, I thank you." Linger revealed a smile. "Grandfather, I am willing to do this. In the future, if little Zheng dares to not treat you well, tell grandfather. Grandfather will support you." Tang Dahai wiped his eyes and emotionally said. Linger nodded and playfully said, "Okay, grandfather is really good." Tian Chanzi waved his hand and said, "Everyone leave." Mu Hongyan also followed the crowd out. Suddenly Linger bashfully said in a low voice, "Big Sister Mu, can you stay?" Mu Hongyan was stunned when she heard this. She turned her head and looked at her blankly. She didn't understand and asked, "Why should I stay?" Linger bit her lips, hesitated for a long time and said, "I don't know anything, Big Sister Mu, can you teach me?" To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1631. Linger's words exposed her clear nature. Mu Hongyan was stunned for a moment before she finally understood what Linger's words meant. Immediately, her beautiful face was filled with spring, like a ripe apple. She was also a woman, so she was very clear about the fear and expectation of a woman when she was still young. She had no reason to refuse and slightly nodded. Everyone else had already left. In order to avoid embarrassment, everyone retreated out of the villa and waited from afar. Mu Hongyan turned into a caring big sister and gently exhorted, "Linger, don't be too shy later. Women will experience their first time, and it will be a little painful. Just bear with it for a while, and it will be fine." Linger seemed to understand and nodded. "I'm not afraid of pain." Looking at her delicate appearance, Mu Hongyan couldn't help but chuckle. Her fingers lifted the strands of hair by her ear and said, "Don't worry, I'm here for everything." Linger nodded in confusion. A piece of clothing slid down from Linger's body, revealing her graceful figure. Mu Hongyan's eyes revealed a look of admiration. As a woman, she had to admit that Linger was like a budding flower. Although it was already mature, it had not been plucked and was so tender that water could be pinched out. Her skin was snow-white and did not lose its rosy color. Even Mu Hongyan felt a rush of excitement when she saw it. Linger was transformed from a 100-year-old ginseng, and was the most perfect figure. Moreover, even if she did not exercise, her figure would still be in the most perfect state. This was really the golden ratio. If it was more or less, she would lose her beauty and charm. "Linger, you are so beautiful." Mu Hongyan could not hold back and her fingers gently slid across Linger's skin. Linger slightly trembled and her face was red as she said, "Big Sister Mu, you are also very beautiful." Mu Hongyan had the unique charm of a mature woman, which was completely different from Linger's youth. However, Mu Hongyan was experienced, so she naturally admired Linger's youthful state. Linger took off her clothes and not long after, they were completely naked. She tried her best to restrain the shyness in her heart as she gently bit her lips. Her snow-white teeth left 2 shallow teeth marks on her rosy lips. Mu Hongyan understood her feelings and comforted her softly. Don't worry. Do as I say. Tang Zheng had already taken off his clothes and was lying on the bed like a log. Linger wanted to look but didn't dare to. She could only glance at him from the corner of her eyes. Mu Hongyan laughed involuntarily and said, "There are only a few of us here. If you want to look, just look openly." Linger was so embarrassed that her ears turned red as she said in a mosquito-like voice, "Big Sister Mu, don't make fun of me. From now on, you are his woman. What can't you see? This is an open and above-board matter. It is a matter of course. Can't you look at me?" Mu Hongyan guided and tried her best to dispel Linger's fear of difficulties. She set an example and pretended to be natural and unrestrained as she looked at Tang Zheng. But when her gaze fell on Tang Zheng, her face couldn't help but turn red. Her mind was filled with images that were not suitable for children, and her breathing also became hurried. "Big Sister Mu, what's wrong?" Linger asked with concern. Mu Hongyan took a deep breath as her chest heaved up and down. Only then did she suppress the restlessness in her heart and said with a trembling voice, "I'm fine. Let's begin." Linger was looking forward to it, but she was also at a loss as she followed Mu Hongyan's instructions. Everything seemed unfamiliar, and even a little clumsy. But it was precisely this simplicity that made Mu Hongyan's heart palpitate. She secretly made up her mind as she glanced at Tang Zheng and spat. "If you dare to not treat Linger well in the future, I won't agree to it. See how I'll deal with you." She was deeply moved by Linger's spirit and sacrifice. Although Linger didn't have any experience, she was very smart and gradually understood the experience that Mu Hongyan imparted to her. Hiss! Linger sucked in a breath of cold air as her delicate nose wrinkled. Her eyes were like water, as if they could speak. Mu Hongyan looked at her, and felt as if she had experienced it herself. Her heart clenched as she said, "If it hurts, stop for a while." Linger stubbornly shook her head. She took a deep breath and stubbornly said, "I'm fine." Then, she followed Mu Hongyan's legendary experience, and followed the same pattern. She gradually understood the essence of it, and that indescribably wonderful feeling. Mu Hongyan's face and ears turned red as her breathing involuntarily quickened. Especially when Linger's mouth couldn't help but let out a faint sound. It was as if there was magic that drilled into her heart and teased every cell, causing her heart to itch unbearably. "Linger, you've already learned it. Just do as you wish. I'll go out first." After she finished speaking, she didn't wait for Linger's reply. She didn't even dare to look back, much less take another look as she flew away. Linger fell into a wonderful state. She forgot everything and didn't have time to pay attention to Mu Hongyan's departure. She felt a powerful pure yang energy enter her body. Then her purine energy also continuously flowed into Tang Zheng's body. She was formed from ginseng, so this feeling was much clearer than other people. Especially after the pure yang energy settled in her body and fused with her zhen qi. Then, her zhen qi surged like a torrential river. This also has the effect of increasing power? She was very smart and immediately understood that this was a mutually beneficial process. Not only was her pure yin energy useful to her master, but his pure yang energy also had a great effect on her. The pure yang energy and pure yin energy interacted and fused within the two people's bodies. Two auras slowly rose from the top of their heads, one black and one white, one yin and one yang. They intertwined and intertwined above their heads. You had me, I had you, just like two people on a bed. This was a great harmony that had never been seen before. It even surpassed Tang Zheng's previous state of mind when he did this. That was because Linger had a special constitution. Of course, it was also because Tang Zheng's strength had reached the peak of perfection. It was far from what it was in the past. When all these factors were combined, it created this wonderful and complex change. More and more auras rose from the top of their heads. The yin and yang auras also increased, They were like two clouds, constantly tumbling and changing, faintly emitting the sound of wind and thunder. Linger was immersed in this wonderful state, and didn't notice the strange phenomenon above her head. She only instinctively let her body rise and fall, like a small boat in the middle of the sea, undulating. However, the Zhen qi in her body continued to rise. It broke through one restriction after another, breaking through a threshold. She was wild with joy. She had never experienced such a feeling of cultivation rapidly rising. She felt that she was too blessed. This wasn't helping her master, but rather her master was helping her. How was this a sacrifice? This was a great honor. At this time, her respect for her master was like a torrential river. It was indescribable. This feeling of rising continued. The yin and yang auras above her head also changed more and more violently. Finally, after the two auras completely fused, they gradually separated and turned into a yin and yang fish. This was the harmony of yin and yang. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1632. Suddenly Linger let out a delicate cry. She straightened her body, revealing her beautiful figure. Then she stopped moving. The wind stopped and the rain stopped. Bang! The yin-yang fish dissipated and split into two. The yin qi entered Tang Zheng's body, while the yang qi completely fell from Ling-er's head. Ling-er suddenly opened her eyes, which were filled with joy. Her cultivation had broken through a huge threshold and reached the first stage of the soul formation realm. Ling-er was transformed from ginseng, so her cultivation speed was much faster than other people's. Furthermore, she was quite intelligent and didn't relax. She had been working hard on her cultivation. Therefore, she had broken through to the first stage of the Yuanying realm, but she never expected that she could break through 9 stages in one go. It was simply a miracle. Before she could slowly appreciate this joy, her gaze immediately fell on Tang Zheng's body. Compared to her own gains, she was more concerned about her master's safety. When her gaze fell on Tang Zheng's body, she discovered that his eyes were still closed. Her heart immediately felt as if it was being grabbed. Her face was filled with disappointment, but she suddenly heard a voice in her heart. Ling, Master. She was overjoyed. Her eyes glowed as she asked, Master, are you awake? However, when she looked at Tang Zheng, she realized that his eyes were still closed. She couldn't help but be stunned. Could it be that she was hallucinating? No, that was her master's voice. How could she have heard wrongly? Ling, I'm in your heart. Tang Zheng's voice sounded again, but it didn't enter her ears. Instead, it sounded directly in her heart. She immediately came to a realization. She was actually connected to her master's heart. Master, how could this be? Linger asked in confusion. I don't know either. Perhaps it's because of what we did just now. Master, you know everything. Linger lowered her head. Although Tang Zheng's eyes were still closed, she didn't dare to look at him. Her face was red all the way to her neck. Linger, thank you, Tang Zheng said gratefully. His tone was complicated, as if he didn't expect Ling-er to make such a big sacrifice for him. Master. Hearing this, Linger's heart surged and her emotions fluctuated. She said, I'm willing to do this. It's my honor. Silly Linger. Tang Zheng hesitated for a while and sighed. Linger isn't stupid at all. Linger is very smart, Linger said with a sweet and happy smile. After a pause, Linger hurriedly asked, Master, what happened to you? My pure yang energy is about to erupt. It's currently brewing and will soon erupt completely. Fortunately, you saved me and resolved my pure yang energy. Otherwise, I would really be in danger. Tang Zheng replied. Although he had fallen into a deep sleep, it was different this time. In the past he was muddle-headed, but now his consciousness was very clear. Previously, his consciousness was completely sealed and he couldn't sense or communicate with the outside world. However, ever since he and Linger reached a great harmony, everything changed. Not only could he communicate with Linger, but he could also sense the outside world. However, he had no way to communicate with others. Currently, he could only communicate with Linger alone. However, this also solved a big problem. At least he wasn't blind, and had a way to find a solution. Linger, I will definitely treat you well in the future. Tang Zheng promised. As a man, he dared to take responsibility for what he did. Since it had already happened, he should take responsibility and not avoid it. Linger's mouth revealed a charming and happy smile as she gently said, Master, I will also serve you well. After tasting human nature for the first time, her every movement had a different kind of charm that made people's hearts palpitate. Tang Zheng's heart couldn't help but violently beat. He thought to himself that he hadn't realized before that Linger had already grown into such a beautiful young lady. What virtue did he have to be able to make her fall in love with him? If he dared to not take responsibility, even the heavens wouldn't tolerate it. Master, when can you recover? Linger naturally didn't know about Tang Zheng's complicated thoughts, and hurriedly asked the most important question. Tang Zheng regretfully said, I'm afraid I can only maintain this state for the time being. I will need your help before I can communicate with the outside world. This is Linger's honor. Master, I believe you will get better very soon. Linger, put on our clothes first and then let the others come in. I have something important to tell them. Tang Zheng was very clear that he was racing against the god of death. He had to race against time. If he was slightly careless, the pure yang energy would completely erupt, and then he would fall into a state of eternal damnation. Linger hurriedly climbed down from his body, but her legs were weak. She staggered and almost fell to the ground. She said in a slightly embarrassed manner, Master, I'm too stupid. Linger is the smartest. She's not stupid. Tang Zheng comforted her. Linger happily laughed and hurriedly dressed the two of them. Looking at the neatly dressed master, she revealed a very gratified expression. She was like a newly married wife who had dressed her husband properly. That kind of pride and arrogance was overflowing in her words. When the others saw Linger walk out, no one revealed a frivolous expression. Instead, they all looked at her with incomparable respect. Of course, there was no lack of anticipation in their eyes. Master wants everyone to go in, Linger said. What? Is he awake? Everyone was shocked. They hurriedly pushed the door open and entered, but they still saw Tang Zheng lying on the bed like a block of wood. Master has not woken up, but he is already connected to me and can communicate freely. Linger explained. Everyone was enlightened, but they also felt that it was magical. Tang Zheng and Linger were connected, especially Mu Hongyan. She looked left and right. What she could not do, Linger had done. However, she was not jealous. Instead, she was sincerely gratified. Linger had paid so much. If she did not gain anything, then it would really be disappointing. Linger walked to Tang Zheng's side and looked at him deeply. She said to everyone, Master said that his pure yang energy has not completely erupted, but is in the process of brewing. However, as for when it will erupt, he does not have a definite time. But there is no doubt that this time will not be long. He is already very dangerous. After repeating Tang Zheng's words, Linger's expression became dignified. Everyone had different expressions, but without exception, their faces were gloomy. Tian Chanzi said in a deep voice, Linger, quickly tell him that Shir and the others will be back soon. Then they will dissolve his pure yang energy. Linger shook her head and said, Master said that this is not enough. This time is different from the past. They may not be able to dissolve his pure yang energy. We have also sent people to find the Empyrean fairy. Mu Hongyan quickly added. Linger still shook her head. Master said that we cannot completely pin our hopes on the Empyrean fairy. Moreover, he does not have much time left. If the Empyrean fairy is not found, then he will be in danger. So we must think of another way. Then what can we do? Everyone looked at her with burning eyes. Chapter 1633. Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed. They had never expected that Tang Zheng had already found a way. This was really a pleasant surprise. Everyone hurriedly urged Linger to see what kind of method it was. After Linger received Tang Zheng's instructions, she slowly said, All living things under the heavens are solemn, and the sun is illustrious. Solemnity surpasses the heavens and illustrious surpasses the earth. In short, extreme yin gives birth to yang, and extreme yang gives birth to yin. The Empyrean fairy had used this principle to survive the danger of the 9 saint body. She nourished herself in the place of extreme yin, and extreme yin gave birth to yang, thus escaping the disaster. Therefore, by the same principle, we must find a place of extreme yang, and let Tang Zheng nourish himself there. Extreme yang gives birth to yin, and there might be a chance of survival. Ling Er was confused as she repeated Tang Zheng's words. Many people were also confused as they did not understand what was going on. Tian Chanzi understood immediately, and his eyes gradually lit up. He clapped his hands and praised. Good, you are really smart. You even thought of this method. Seeing this, the others asked, Tian Chanzi, is this method really feasible? They were not completely confident. With their cultivation and knowledge, they were not able to figure out the mystery. Tian Chanzi, on the other hand, had already begun to see the door. Although his knowledge was not as deep as Tang Zheng's, after such a breakthrough, it was as if the clouds had been lifted. Tian Chanzi nodded seriously and sighed in disappointment. If there is any feasible method, this method may be one of them. It is worth a try. Moreover, this is his own wish, and we must respect his choice. Then where is the place of extreme yang? Mu Hongyan asked. This. Tian Chanzi was in a dilemma. He racked his brains, but he did not know where the place of extreme yang was. The witch tribe elder recalled the holy land of the tribe. Even Xiaobai was born in the holy land. Could it be that it was a place of extreme yang? Unfortunately, that place had been completely destroyed. Everyone was at a loss of what to do. Linger said slowly. The mystery is in what I said just now. It is so solemn that it is beyond the heavens. This is referring to a place of extreme yin. The place of extreme yin that we found back then was such a place. And the place of extreme yin is in the gate of heaven, which fits the mystery of this sentence. Everyone was enlightened. No wonder this sentence sounded so wise and profound. It turned out that it was so profound. Tian Chanzi couldn't help but ask curiously. Linger, you asked him where he got this sentence from. Why is it that the more I think about it, the more I feel that it's not that simple? Ling Er blinked and replied. Master, what you said was the original words in the heavenly book. Hiss. Everyone gasped. So it was the original words of the heavenly book. No wonder it contained so much mystery. Tian Chanzi was deep in thought as he muttered to himself. No wonder the Empyrean fairy knew about the method of generating yang through yin extreme. It turns out that everything was recorded in the tomes of arcane. Heaven and earth understood the tomes of arcane, so it's not surprising that they knew about this method. Ordinary people definitely wouldn't be able to think of such a wonderful method. Ling Er continued. Hehe, earth refers to the land of extreme yang. It's not in the sky, but on the ground. Moreover, it's in the deepest part of the earth. This is the core of the earth, which is also the land of extreme yang. Ling Er revealed the riddle for everyone. Everyone was enlightened, but they didn't feel relaxed at all. This sentence was easy to say, but how difficult was it to do? The earth's core. This seemed to be a simple word, but was it easy to reach that place? Of course it wasn't easy. Even if it was possible, it was still unknown. Mu Hongyan clenched her teeth and said resolutely, now that science and technology have advanced, it's not necessarily impossible to reach the Earth's core. I'll go find the world's most powerful technology. We must reach the Earth's core. Tian Chanzi was deep in thought and said, I'm afraid it doesn't need to be as complicated as you make it out to be. Since this brat dares to say it, he must have a way. Let's hear him out for now. Ling Er revealed a smile and said, Master said that Senior Tian Chanzi is very powerful. He actually guessed his thoughts. He's simply a roundworm in his stomach. Ling Er covered her mouth and giggled at the end. Tian Chanzi was greatly embarrassed. He glared hatefully at Tang Zheng and said, Brat, your life is already hanging by a thread, and you still have the mood to make fun of me? Humph. Mu Hongyan hurriedly asked. Ling Er quickly asked him what method he has. Everyone's hearts were in suspense. They were far more anxious than Tang Zheng, the person involved. Ling Er quickly put away her smile and said seriously, Master said that there's no need to go through the trouble of relying on high technology. He already has a method, and the method is on the Tree of Life. Tree of Life. Everyone was completely confused. What did this have to do with the Tree of Life? The Tree of Life's roots extend in all directions and directly reach the Earth's core. So, from the roots of the Tree of Life down, you will successfully reach the destination. Hearing this wonderful idea, everyone was shocked. They were impressed by Tang Zheng's imagination. The others definitely wouldn't have thought of this. This was because they didn't know much about the Tree of Life. They only knew that the Tree of Life could improve the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and was even related to a world. However, they definitely didn't know that the roots of the Tree of Life could actually reach the Earth's core. However, this wasn't a problem for Tang Zheng. This was because he knew the Tree of Life too well. Perhaps he didn't know much about the Tree of Life in the human world, but he knew enough about the Tree of Life in the heaven realm. He even witnessed the growth of the Tree of Life. In addition, with just a thought, he knew the Tree of Life in the heaven realm like the back of his hand. It was naturally not difficult for him to deduce the Tree of Life in the human world. Moreover, when the Tree of Life in the human world sprouted, he was also a witness. Naturally, he had a deeper understanding. Silence. Everyone opened their eyes wide and looked at Tang Zheng in shock. Finally, Tian Chanzi clapped his hands and said with joy, "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go immediately." "Aren't we waiting for the others?" Mu Hongyan asked. "Not for the time being. We will go to the Tree of Life first and let the others go to the Tree of Life as well. In addition, we can't stop searching for the Empyrean Fairy. We still have to find her," Tian Chanzi said firmly. He didn't say the second half of his sentence, which was that he wasn't sure if Tang Zheng's method would work. Just in case, it was always good to prepare a few more methods. Immediately, the villa was in chaos again. Everyone hurriedly prepared. Although the powerful enemies in the human world had been eliminated, there were occasionally fish that escaped the net, which was nothing to worry about. However, Tang Zheng was too weak now. Just in case, they had to be fully prepared. Therefore, they had to mobilize a lot of people to go to the Tree of Life this time and protect Tang Zheng in all aspects. Chapter 1634. Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed. They had never expected that Tang Zheng had already thought of a way. This was really a pleasant surprise. Everyone hurriedly urged Linger to see what this method was. Linger received Tang Zheng's instructions and said slowly, "Everything in the world is solemn, and Yang is brilliant. The solemnity is beyond the heavens, and the brilliance is beyond the earth. When the two come together, things are born. In short, extreme yin produces yang, and extreme yang produces yin." The Empyrean Fairy had used this principle to survive the danger of the 9 yin saint body. She nourished herself in a place with extreme yin, and extreme yin produces yang, thus escaping the disaster. Therefore, by the same principle, we must find a place with extreme yang and let Tang Zheng nourish himself there. Extreme yang produces yin, and there might be a chance of survival. Ling was confused as she repeated Tang Zheng's words. Many people were also confused as they did not understand what was going on. However, Heaven Monk immediately understood. His eyes gradually lit up. He clapped his hands and praised. "Good, you brat are really smart. You even thought of this method." When the others saw this, they asked, "Tian Chanzi, is this method really feasible?" They were not completely confident. With their cultivation and knowledge, they were not able to figure out the mystery. Tian Chanzi had already begun to understand. Although he was not as knowledgeable as Tang Zheng, after this breakthrough, it was as if the clouds had been lifted. Heaven Monk nodded his head seriously and sighed in disappointment. If there is any other feasible method, then this method might be one of them, and it is worth a try. Moreover, this is his own wish, and we must respect his choice. Then where is the place with extreme yang? Mu Hongyan asked. Tian Chanzi was in a dilemma. He racked his brains and did not know where the place with extreme yang was. The witch tribe elder recalled the Holy Land in the tribe. Even Xiao Bai was born in the Holy Land. Could it be that it was a place with extreme yang? Unfortunately, that place had been completely destroyed. Everyone was at a loss of what to do. Linger said slowly, "The mystery is in what I said just now. It is so solemn that it is beyond the heavens. This is referring to a place of extreme een. The place of extreme een that we found back then was such a place. And the place of extreme een is in the gate of heaven, which fits the mystery of this sentence. Everyone was enlightened. No wonder this sentence sounded so wise and profound. It turned out that it was so profound. Tian Chanzi couldn't help but ask curiously, Linger, you asked him where he got this sentence from. Why is it that the more I think about it, the more I feel that it's not that simple? Ling blinked and replied, Master, what you said was the original words in the heavenly book. Hiss. Everyone gasped. So it was the original words of the heavenly book. No wonder it contains so much mystery. Tian Chanzi was deep in thought as he muttered to himself. No wonder the Empyrean fairy knew about the method of generating yang through een extreme. It turns out that everything was recorded in the tomes of arcane. Heaven and earth understood the tomes of arcane, so it's not surprising that they knew about this method. Ordinary people definitely wouldn't be able to think of such a wonderful method. Linger continued. This is the place of extreme yang. It's not in the sky, but on the ground. Moreover, it's in the deepest part of the earth. This is the core of the earth, which is also the place of extreme yang. Ling revealed the riddle for everyone. Everyone was enlightened, but they didn't feel relaxed at all. This sentence was easy to say, but how difficult was it to do? The core of the earth. This seemed like a simple word, but was it easy to reach that place? Of course it wasn't easy. It was even unknown if it was possible. Mu Hongyan clenched her teeth and said resolutely, Now that science and technology are advanced, it's not impossible to reach the core of the earth. I'll go find the most powerful technology in the world. We must reach the core of the earth. Tian Chanzi was deep in thought and said, I'm afraid it doesn't need to be as complicated as you make it out to be. Since this brat dares to say it, he must have a way. Let's hear him out for now. Linger revealed a smile and said, Master said that Senior Tian Chanzi is very powerful. He actually guessed his thoughts. He's like a roundworm in his stomach. At the end Ling covered her mouth and chuckled. Tian Chanzi was greatly embarrassed. He glared hatefully at Tang Zheng and said, Brat, your life is already hanging by a thread, and you're still in the mood to make fun of me? Humph. Mu Hongyan hurriedly asked. Ling quickly asked him what method he has. Everyone's hearts were in suspense. They were far more anxious than Tang Zheng, the person involved. Ling quickly put away her smile and said seriously, Master said that there's no need to go through the trouble of using technology. He already has a method, and the method is on the Tree of Life. Tree of Life? Everyone was completely confused. What did this have to do with the Tree of Life? The roots of the Tree of Life extend in all directions and directly reach the core of the earth. So, from the roots of the Tree of Life down, you will successfully reach your destination. Hearing this ingenious idea, everyone was shocked. They were impressed by Tang Zheng's imagination. Others would never have thought of this. This was because they didn't know much about the Tree of Life. They only knew that the Tree of Life could improve the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and was even related to a world. However, they definitely didn't know that the roots of the Tree of Life could actually reach the core of the earth. However, this wasn't a problem for Tang Zheng. This was because he knew the Tree of Life too well. Perhaps he didn't know much about the Tree of Life in the human world, but he knew enough about the Tree of Life in the heaven realm. He even witnessed the growth of the Tree of Life. In addition, with just a thought, he knew the Tree of Life in the heaven realm like the back of his hand. Naturally, it wasn't difficult for him to deduce the Tree of Life in the human world. Moreover, when the Tree of Life in the human world sprouted, he was also a witness. Naturally, he had a deeper understanding and understanding. Silence. Everyone widened their eyes and looked at Tang Zheng in shock. Finally, Tian Chanzi clapped his hands and said happily, Then what are we waiting for? Let's set off immediately. Aren't we waiting for the others? Mu Hongyan asked. Not for the time being. Let's go to the Tree of Life first, and let the others go directly to the Tree of Life. In addition, we can't stop searching for the Empyrean fairy. We still have to find her, Tian Chanzi said firmly. He didn't say the second half of his sentence, which was that he wasn't sure if Tang Zheng's method would work. Just in case, it was always good to prepare a few more methods. Suddenly, the villa was in chaos again. Everyone hurriedly prepared. Although the powerful enemies in the human world had been eliminated, the occasional fish that escaped the net was nothing to worry about. But now Tang Zheng was too weak. Just in case, they had to be fully prepared. Therefore, this time they had to mobilize a lot of people to go to the Tree of Life and protect Tang Zheng in all aspects. The sky turned white. On the first day of the new year, before the sun had risen, a group of people had already soared into the sky from the villa. In an instant, the sky above the villa was filled with people. Riding on their magic weapons, they flew towards the northwest with whooshing sounds. To read a novel, please visit Chapter 1635. The Northwest was no longer a desert, but an endless oasis. The changes were earth-shattering, and this was all thanks to the Tree of Life. From afar, the Tree of Life was like a giant umbrella that grew out of the ground, covering the sky and the earth. It was a spectacular sight. This oasis had long been sealed off by the authorities to prevent humans from approaching. Although the authorities also wanted to study the Tree of Life, after experiencing a few bumps, they tacitly stopped coveting the Tree of Life. Everyone landed in front of the Tree of Life. When they looked up, they suddenly felt that they were insignificant like ants. Tian Chanzi sighed with emotion. The Tree of Life has grown to this point. It is no longer something that can be destroyed just because someone wants to. Back then, the Tree of Life was destroyed by the combined power of the ghost realm, not by a single person. Now the Tree of Life had fully matured and had the power to protect itself. The witch clan quickly took action, establishing a protective circle around the periphery to guard against the enemy. Tang Zheng was carried by Ling, accompanied by Tian Chanzi, and walked step by step towards the Tree of Life. As for Mu Hongyan, she did not follow and stayed in the capital to take care of the overall situation. The three of them walked to the trunk of the Tree of Life. Tian Chanzi pointed at the Tree of Life and said, "The roots of the Tree of Life are developed. How can we determine which one will reach the core of the earth? And how can we smoothly go down?" Ling, had already been instructed by her master, and spoke with assurance. Master said that the Tree of Life only has one main root that reaches the core of the earth, and it is not difficult to find this main root. After Ling, finished walking, she directly squatted down and inserted her arms into the soil. Immediately, her arms extended infinitely, spreading into the depths of the soil. Ling, was originally transformed from ginseng, and the soil was the soil that nourished her growth. The soil to her was like water to a fish, allowing her to use it wantonly. After a while, her fingers touched a root. This root was much smaller than the root next to it, and was very easy to overlook. If not for Tang Zheng's guidance, she definitely would not have found it. When Tang Zheng understood the Tree of Life, he realized that the main root of the Tree of Life was not the seemingly thick root system, but a small root system hidden within the large root system. This was the main root that extended all the way to the core of the earth. Linger looked up at Tian Chanzi and said with a smile, "I found the main root." Tian Chanzi looked at her in surprise. With his ability, he might not be able to find it so quickly. He quickly asked, "Then how do we go down?" "I have an idea too." Linger pointed her finger, and a mass of green light enveloped Tang Zheng. It was as if he was in a bubble. Linger transformed into her original form, a small ginseng shrouded in a faint halo. "I'll take Master down." Tian Chanzi looked at Linger, then at Tang Zheng and said, "I'll go with you." "This is very deep," Linger reminded. Tian Chanzi laughed dryly and said, "Do you think I'm afraid? Don't worry, I won't drag you down." "Oh." Linger did not refuse and said, "Then let's go down quickly." After saying this, one of her roots extended out and wrapped around Tang Zheng. With a whoosh, they drilled into the soil and disappeared. How could Tian Chanzi be willing to fall behind? His whole body lit up with a ray of light, and with a boom, he smashed a large hole in the ground and disappeared without a trace. This hole went all the way down, just like a pangolin burrowing into the ground. Compared to Linger's method, this was clearly inferior. This was where Linger excelled. She was transformed from ginseng, So this was like returning to her home, like a fish back in water. How could Tian Chanzi compare? Underground, one of Linger's roots wrapped around the tree of life. Immediately, a majestic spiritual energy of heaven and earth entered her body, benefiting her greatly. Tian Chanzi was also wrapped in a ball of light. He opened his eyes wide and saw the situation underground clearly. He also saw the developed roots of the tree of life, which were inextricably linked. Being in the middle of it was like being in a maze. Seeing that Linger chose such a thin route, Tian Chanzi was shocked and asked, "This is the main route you chose?" "I didn't choose it, but Master did." Linger corrected him. Tian Chanzi raised his beard and said, "Nonsense, how can such a route be the main route? For such a towering tree like the tree of life, the main root must be the thickest one. It must be that one." Tian Chanzi turned his head and stared at the thickest root, making a solemn vow. Linger firmly believed in Tang Zheng's choice and retorted, "I believe in Master. If Master says this root is the main root, then it must be this one." Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes and muttered, "Truly hopeless. Each and every one of them is fooling around." After a slight pause, Tian Chanzi said, "Then let's wait and see. Let's see who made the right choice." Tian Chanzi stared at the main route he chose and quickly dived down with Linger. This was much more difficult than diving, especially the deeper they went, the more complicated the inextricably linked routes became. Tian Chanzi had to constantly avoid these complicated routes, turning left and right, constantly shuttling back and forth. On the other hand, Tang Zheng was much more relaxed. The massive green light that wrapped around him seemed to have great magical power. Wherever it went, it directly penetrated the soil, effortlessly. Tian Chanzi was envious, jealous, and hateful. Why didn't he have such good treatment? Linger seemed to see through his thoughts and explained, "My skills can only ensure Master's safety." "So Senior Tian Chanzi, I'm sorry." Tian Chanzi pretended to be natural and unrestrained, and said without a care, "How can such a small problem be difficult for me? I'm not that brat, like a vegetable who can't take care of himself." Linger was relieved and said, "That's good. Let's continue forward." Linger quickly led the way. That small root seemed to have no end, but Tian Chanzi walked to the end, because that thick root suddenly stopped. It didn't shrink in the slightest, as if it suddenly broke off, and suddenly disappeared. Tian Chanzi couldn't help but stop, looking at this scene in disbelief. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and as if he was possessed he said to himself, "How come it's gone? This is too sudden." Linger pursed her lips and chuckled, as if she had already expected all of this. She said without any surprise, "Senior, I'm right. This is Master's instructions. How could it be wrong?" Tian Chanzi blew his beard and glared, and said with a grunt, "That brat was right for once." He simply didn't choose any other routes, so as to avoid losing face again. Losing face in front of Linger really didn't feel good. "Then I'll lead the way in front. If Senior is tired, please understand that my cultivation is still weak and my speed is slow," Linger said with incomparable sincerity, and then led Tang Zheng along the small route, quickly advancing towards the Earth's core. Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes and criticized in his heart, "Little girl, your speed is slow. I really don't know what's fast. This is underground, not flat ground. If I didn't use all my skills, I wouldn't be able to keep up with you." To read a novel without mistakes, please visit Chapter 1636. Linger quickly moved forward, and a blazing aura gradually attacked them. Tian Chanzi was keenly aware of it, and hurriedly reminded, "Linger, the Earth's core is not far away." Linger said seriously, "I know, the main root of the Tree of Life extends all the way to the Earth's core. I have already sensed the aura of the Earth's core from the main root." Tian Chanzi raised his head and glanced. He did not know how far away they were from the surface, and even his divine sense could not extend so far. In the past, he had never thought that he would one day reach the Earth's core. After all, it was not a good place. Just the blazing heat of the Earth's core alone was enough to make him suffer. "Be careful later." Tian Chanzi did not forget to warn. Linger's original ginseng body was also like a person, but a miniature version. She hurriedly nodded and said, I know, senior. After saying that, her roots wrapped even tighter around Tang Zheng, pulling him to her side and moving down step by step. Crash! The sound of rolling waves sounded, like the roar of a ferocious beast, but also like the explosion of thunder. It was breathtaking. What's that sound? Tian Chanzi's heart trembled, and he hurriedly asked. Linger did not answer, and like pushing away the clouds, she directly penetrated through the last layer of soil. Her eyes suddenly opened up, and a fiery red light illuminated her eyes. Tian Chanzi also followed closely behind, drilling a big hole in the last obstacle. With a plop, a rock fell from the hole. Gulp! A bubble appeared, and then the rock disappeared without a trace, melted into magma. But no one cared about all this. Tian Chanzi and Linga had already been deeply attracted and shocked by the scene in front of them. There was an endless lake filled with fiery red magma, and there was also a fountain of magma bubbling up in the middle of the lake, producing bubbles. After bursting with a gurgling sound, it emitted a blazing aura, filling this small space. The intense heat melted the surrounding rock walls, and the rock walls became as soft as chocolate. This hell-like scene was truly frightening, causing one's heart to involuntarily clench. But what was even more inconceivable was that a slender root extended down from the top of this space, straight into the pool, and was completely submerged by the fiery red magma. However, the strange thing was that the magma, which was so hot that even steel and rock could not melt in an instant, did not melt the main root of the Tree of Life. This main root seemed to have a mysterious magic power. It safely extended into the magma, and seemed to be absorbing the nutrients within. Specks of red light climbed up the main root, and quickly passed through the main root to every root of the Tree of Life. Linger was particularly sensitive to this, especially when one of her roots was wrapped around the main root. She could clearly feel a surge of blazing energy flowing through the main root. This energy was extremely pure. Even though she was only separated by a layer, she could feel how extraordinary this energy was. After a long time, the two finally recovered from their shock. Tian Chanzi exclaimed, "So the Earth's core is actually like this." Linger was also filled with emotion. "Yes, it's really spectacular." Quickly asked that kid, "What should we do next?" Tian Chanzi urged. Linger made a no sound and quickly asked Tang Zheng, "Master, what should we do next?" Although Tang Zheng seemed to be unconscious, his divine sense also saw the scene of the Earth's core. His heart was unable to calm down for a long time, and he was also a little doubtful about the feasibility of his method. But in the end, he still defeated the trace of fear in his heart. Since it was recorded in the heavenly book, it definitely could not be wrong. Moreover, this was the only way now. He could only treat a dead horse as a living horse. Tang Zheng calmly instructed, "Put me in the Earth's core." "What? Put it in the Earth's core?" Linger screamed. She could not believe that Tang Zheng would actually say such a thing. Tian Chanzi was also shocked and shouted, "The Earth's core, could it be that you put it in the magma?" After saying that, Tian Chanzi could not help but shiver in his heart. Although Tian Chanzi admitted that Tang Zheng's physical body was extremely strong because he had cultivated the chaotic Vajra spell, it was still the magma from the Earth's core. It was even hotter than a volcanic eruption. Could he withstand it? Linger was also worried and advised while trembling with fear, "Master, you will be injured like this." Tang Zheng had already made up his mind. How could he change his mind so easily? He said indifferently, "Linger, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. How could I joke around with my life?" Hearing his solemn vow, Linger's heart wavered. She had always had close to blind trust and worship for Tang Zheng, so after thinking for a bit, she believed Tang Zheng's words. "All right then, master, be careful." With that, Linger slowly placed Tang Zheng into the boiling lake. "Assistant. Linger, what are you doing?" This scene shocked Tian Chanzi. He did not care about the blazing high temperature and hurriedly stopped Linger, stopping Tang Zheng. Linger patiently explained, "Senior, this is master's decision. I have to follow his orders." "What kind of stupid decision is this? He's playing around with his life. He's used to messing around, so you should follow his lead." Tian Chanzi had stubbornly followed them down just in case. He did not expect that he had really made the right choice. If he had really allowed these two youngsters to mess around, then in the end, Not even Tang Zheng's corpse would be left. Tian Chanzi had promised to protect Tang Zheng, so how could he just sit by and watch this kind of thing happen? Turning a blind eye. Linger did not expect Tian Chanzi to care so much about Tang Zheng, so she was stubborn and did not know what to do for a moment. Tang Zheng could not directly communicate with Tian Chanzi, so he was anxious and said to Linger, "Tell him that I've already cultivated the indestructible body, so I won't die so easily. Tell him not to worry." Linger immediately passed on the message, but Tian Chanzi did not let them go and said fiercely, "Kid, you can't mess around. Our people have already gone to find the Empyrean fairy, and she'll be back soon. At that time, your yin and yang will be harmonized, and everything will be fine, right? Why take this risk?" Tang Zheng knew that Tian Chanzi was worried about him and was moved, but he still firmly said, "It's better to rely on yourself than on others. I believe in my own judgment." Tian Chanzi stared at Tang Zheng with shining eyes. Although his eyes were closed, Tian Chanzi was still defeated and resentfully let them go. "In this world, there really isn't anyone who messes around like you." Linger sighed in relief and quickly sent Tang Zheng into the magma. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the magma surged like a huge wave in the sea. The magma hit the surrounding walls, giving rise to a series of blue smoke and sizzling sounds. This lake full of magma underwent an unimaginable change, as if it had come alive in an instant. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1637. When Tian Chanzi and Linger saw this scene, they subconsciously stopped what they were doing and stared blankly at the churning magma. "What's going on?" Tian Chanzi muttered to himself. Linger was confused and said, "I don't know either." As soon as her voice fell, the main root of the tree of life began to shake violently. A blazing feeling came from the main root, causing one's heart to tremble. Shwa. The two of them looked at the shaking main root at the same time. Tian Chanzi's heart moved and he shouted, "Be careful." Voila! Raging waves rose up from the lake, and the fiery red magma soared into the sky. A big guy flew out of the magma and fiercely pounced at the two of them. "What is that?" The two of them trembled and reacted at the same time. Even though Linger's body was small, she was extremely nimble and had a lot of strength. She wrapped around Tang Zheng and flew to the side with a so sound, dodging this fierce attack. Shwa. Tian Chanzi did not retreat. He unsheathed his treasure sword and directly slashed out with the Tai sword. With a loud sound, the Tai sword flew back into Tian Chanzi's hand. The thing wrapped in magma was also stunned in midair and stopped. However, Tian Chanzi and Linger clearly saw this thing. It was actually a strange beast, its whole body burning with raging flames. These flames were like its hair, awe-inspiring. The magma slid down from its body, but it did not hurt it at all. It was like rain falling from a person's body. "What is this?" Linger asked curiously. Tian Chanzi's eyes widened, as if his eyeballs were about to pop out. He stared at the strange beast without blinking, his eyes full of disbelief. Hearing Linger's question, he seemed to wake up from a dream. He was so scared that he shivered and screamed, "Fire Qilin! Is this the legendary Fire Qilin?" Tian Chanzi had heard of the legend of the fire unicorn, but he had only heard of its name and had never seen it in person. He thought that it was a mythical beast made up from nothing. Who would have thought that there really was a fire Qilin in this world? It was just that it was hidden in the Earth's core. Normal people would never have the chance to see it. However, Linger had never heard of this name before. She muttered in bewilderment, "Fire Qilin, it seems to be very powerful." Tian Chanzi smiled bitterly in his heart. Of course it was very powerful. That was a legendary divine beast, a mysterious existence that was not inferior to the divine dragon. Whoosh! Tian Chanzi took a few deep breaths. He was very knowledgeable, and had even seen the dragon clan. Why should he be so afraid of the fire Qilin? Didn't it also have 4 claws? There was nothing to be afraid of. He kept trying to comfort himself, and finally, it worked a little. His mood gradually calmed down. The fire Qilin shook its huge head and stared at the two of them with its bell-sized eyes. Finally, its gaze fell on the unconscious Tang Zheng. Whoosh! It stepped on the air and walked straight toward Tang Zheng. Linger screamed in fright and hurriedly pulled Tang Zheng to her side, afraid that he would fall into the fire Qilin's hands. The fire Qilin glared at Linger with dissatisfaction, as if asking why she was not cooperating. Then its body flashed and flew toward Tang Zheng. "Don't hurt master." Linger was shocked as she flew over in an attempt to help Tang Zheng out of this predicament. With a flash of light, Linger had turned into a human and hugged Tang Zheng. She used her back to resist the fire Qilin, not giving it a chance to hurt Tang Zheng. Bang! There was no sharp pain as expected. Linger was pushed forward by a wave of heat. She stabilized her body with great difficulty. Turning her head, she saw Tian Chanzi and the fire Qilin fighting. Tang Zheng did not expect that there would be a fire Qilin in the core of the earth. But no matter who it was, they could not stop him from saving himself. Therefore he made a prompt decision and ordered Linger, "Quickly throw me into the magma." Linger was originally at a loss. After hearing Tang Zheng's words, she seemed to have found her backbone. She nodded fiercely and loosened her hands. With a plop, Tang Zheng fell from her hands and fell straight into the magma, splashing red magma all over the sky. Tian Chanzi was fighting fiercely with the fire Qilin. After recovering from the initial shock, Tian Chanzi gritted his teeth and used all his skills to fight with the fire Qilin. There was no doubt that the fire Qilin was a legendary divine beast. Its power was quite great. After only a few moves, Tian Chanzi had already deeply felt and experienced its power. But he did not retreat. He was the only line of defense. There was no way to retreat. Hearing the plop, Tian Chanzi's heart trembled. He hurriedly turned his head and saw Tang Zheng being submerged in magma and quickly sinking. Immediately his face turned ashen. He did not expect that after encountering such an unforeseen event, Tang Zheng would still be so stubborn. This time it was really difficult to predict the danger. The fire Qilin also saw this scene and snorted. It seemed to be sneering complacently, laughing at Tang Zheng for overestimating himself. Tian Chanzi took a deep breath and simply ignored Tang Zheng. He had to deal with the fire Qilin first. Otherwise, he would die in the fire Qilin's hands before knowing whether Tang Zheng was alive or dead. "Kill!" Tian Chanzi roared. The Taya sword revealed its sharpness and slashed out again. Immediately, the whistling sound of the sword resounded through the space, shaking people's souls. However, the fire Qilin's eyes showed contempt. It roared and sucked in the magma like a giant whale sucking in water. Walala, the magma was sucked into its mouth like water. Puff. It opened its mouth and spat at Tian Chanzi. The hot red magma was driven by the strong pressure, and shot at Tian Chanzi like a sword released from a bow. Tian Chanzi hurriedly formed a sword sign with both hands. The Taya sword buzzed and trembled as if it was crying. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Rays of sword light gathered in front of him and condensed into a sword wall. Kacha. The magma directly smashed the sword wall into pieces and surged towards Tian Chanzi. Tian Chanzi shouted and pushed forward with both hands. The Taya sword was placed horizontally in front of his chest. The surging sword chi rushed out like a tide. Boom. With a loud sound, the space seemed to tremble. The Taya sword finally blocked the impact of the magma. Roar, roar, roar. The fire Qilin seemed to be angry that its attack did not work. It opened its mouth and spat out a ball of flame. It mixed with the magma and attacked the Taya sword. The Taya sword slowly turned red and was extremely hot. It was as if it was being refined by the high temperature. If it was not for Tian Chanzi's Jin Qi, it was likely that it would have been refined. Tian Chanzi felt a wave of heat in his face. His hair and clothes were about to burn, especially his hair. He could already smell a burning smell. "Damn it, do you want me to become bald?" Tian Chanzi cursed. "I won't let you succeed. Taya sword, man and sword as one." Tian Chanzi had also broken through the man and sword as one realm. Although he was not as good as Tang Zheng, his power was doubled. With a flash of light, he and the Taya sword became one. The sword was the person, and the person was the sword. Whoosh! A sharp sound pierced through the air, piercing through the magma and flames and heading straight for the fire Qilin's head. The fire Qilin looked at it with disdain and waved its claws. A red light flashed on them. Bang! With a muffled sound, the Taya sword was sent flying and slammed into the wall. The tip of the sword penetrated the wall and continued to tremble. Next to it, a human-shaped hole appeared in the wall. Tian Chanzi happened to be embedded in it. Translation. Chapter 1638. The fire Qilin swatted away Tian Chanzi with its claw, then turned around and aimed at Ling'er. Ling'er quickly calmed down and pointed forward with her slender hand. A vine flew out from between her fingers, and like a whip, ruthlessly lashed at the fire Qilin. Roar. The fire Qilin roared, and a ball of flames flew out from its mouth, burning the vines in an instant, causing the attack to collapse. Ling'er turned pale with fright and hurriedly retreated. However, this was the fire Qilin's territory after all. It moved like the wind, bringing along a wave of heat as it pounced towards Ling'er. Whoosh! Whoosh! Vines flew out from between Ling'er's fingers and quickly condensed into a wall that glowed with a faint green light. Boom! The fire Qilin crashed into the wall, causing it to tremble violently. Ling'er's face turned pale. Although she had broken through to the first tier of the demigod realm, she was still too weak compared to the fire Qilin. Even Tian Chanzi was no match for it, let alone Ling'er. Gotcha! A large hole was torn open in the wall. The fire Qilin shook its body and rushed forward. In an instant, the wall shattered into pieces and fell apart. Ling'er had already retreated to the side of the main route. Seeing the fire Qilin recklessly rushing over, she seized the main route and used it as a whip, ruthlessly whipping the fire Qilin. Pa! A crisp sound rang out, clear and ear-piercing. The fire Qilin was sent flying backwards, crashing into the wall and creating a huge crater. Rocks fell down with a crash. Ah! Ling'er was stunned by this scene. She looked at the main root of the Tree of Life in her hand in disbelief. The main root had been completely lifted out of the magma by her. She could even see the fiery red light at the end, which was tainted by the magma. Not only was the main root not afraid of the lava, it was actually so powerful that it could send the fire Qilin flying. This was not only Ling'er's power, but also the main root's own divine power. The fire Qilin leaped out from the wall with its hind legs and stood in the air. Balls of flames appeared under its four hooves as it glared at Ling'er and the main root in her hand. However, when its gaze fell on the main root, there was a hint of fear in its eyes. Ling'er noticed this, and she curiously looked at the main root in her hand. She couldn't see anything special about it, and it wasn't much different from a normal root. In fact, it was much smaller than a normal root. However, she did not dare to underestimate its divine might. She was like a drowning person who had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. She firmly grasped it in the palm of her hand, and was unwilling to let go for a moment. At some point in time, Tian Chanzi had also climbed out of the pit. Seeing the two sides confronting each other, he asked in surprise, "Why doesn't it dare to attack?" Ling'er couldn't figure it out and guessed, "It seems to be afraid of the main root of the Tree of Life." Tian Chanzi was overjoyed and arrived beside Ling'er in a flash. He tried to take the main root and impatiently said, "Ha ha ha, the heavens have eyes. Then let's use the main root to deal with it." Ah! When his hand landed on the main root, he couldn't help but scream miserably. As if he had been electrocuted, he quickly withdrew his hand. Ling'er looked at him curiously and asked with concern, "Senior, what happened to you?" Tian Chanzi looked at the main root in fear, and said with an expression as if he had seen a ghost, "There is a mysterious power on this main root. Didn't you notice? This power can release a powerful attack. Didn't you feel it?" Ling'er was confused and blankly shook her head. "I didn't feel it." The fire Qilin looked at this scene without saying a word. Especially when Tian Chanzi was defeated. Its mouth revealed a playful expression, as if it was mocking him for overestimating himself. Tian Chanzi's eyes turned and also saw the fire Qilin's reaction. "See, I was right. It also thinks so." Ling'er was even more confused. She scratched her head and said in confusion, "But I didn't feel anything." Tian Chanzi and the fire Qilin both revealed shocked and suspicious expressions. They couldn't guess why Ling'er wasn't repelled by the main root of the Tree of Life. Heaven Monk thought hard, then had an idea, and said, "Could it be that because you are not a human or an animal, but a ginseng, You have something in common with the Tree of Life, so it did not reject you? Ling opened her eyes wide and thought for a while. It seemed that this was really possible. She wanted to ask Tang Zheng if this was the case, but after shouting for a long time, there was no response. She remembered that since Tang Zheng's body fell into the magma, their telepathy seemed to have been cut off. It must be so. This is your unique advantage, others can't compare to it. Tian Chanzi thought for a long time and said with certainty. Ling Er's face also showed a trace of joy. Then we can fight against the Fire Qilin. Tian Chanzi didn't comment and said with a smile. At least, we can save our lives for the time being. Without this advantage, Tian Chanzi didn't have the confidence to save his life from the Fire Qilin. Maybe his life would have been lost here. Roar. The Fire Qilin saw that the two were unscrupulous and became angrier. Its two front hooves kept pawing in the air, and a burning feeling hit them in the face. The Fire Qilin launched another attack. Tian Chanzi hurriedly urged. Quickly, use the main root to whip it. Ling waved the main root, and with a whoosh, the main root drew a whistling sound in the air and whipped the Fire Qilin. Roar. Sparks splashed out from the Fire Qilin's body. It cried out in pain and flew out again, unable to get close. But this thoroughly angered it. Not only did it not stop attacking, but it roared even more mournfully and angrily. Its hind legs kicked off the wall and rushed over again like a cannonball. Tian Chanzi excitedly danced and commanded proudly, whip it left, right, center, yes, whip its head, let it know how powerful it is. In the eyes of the two, the Fire Qilin had long since shed its mysterious light. It was as if it had turned into an ordinary wild beast, allowing the small whip to whip it as it pleased. Ling could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. The Tree of Life's main root was really powerful. It was not inferior to a sacred tool. It could actually release such a powerful divine power that even the Fire Qilin could not get close. Tian Chanzi's hands were itching, but he could not control the main root. He could only watch enviously as Ling waved the main root to attack. He could not help but think that if the main root was refined into a magical treasure, its power would be heaven-defying. But this could only be a thought. Without the main root, how could the Tree of Life survive? It was practically destroying the world. There were many more marks on the Fire Qilin's body. They were all left behind by the main root. Although it was very unruly at first, continuously attacking. But gradually its arrogance gradually decreased. Because it was afraid of the main root, it had no way to break through its opponent's defense. Splash. Suddenly, the magma violently rolled, attracting the Fire Qilin's attention. It immediately stopped attacking and opened its bell-like eyes, staring at the magma suspiciously. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1639. Rumble. A long line of bubbles appeared in the magma. Crash. Huge waves surged out from the magma. This scene immediately attracted the three pairs of eyes, and all kinds of complicated thoughts arose in their hearts. Heaven Monk roared. He was the first to react, pouncing straight towards the magma. With a plop sound, the magma splashed into the sky and disappeared without a trace. Tian Chanzi and Linger looked at each other in dismay, and both of them were worried. Linger said uneasily, "Senior, the Fire Qilin rushed down, so what about Master? Master can't move, so won't he be killed by the Fire Qilin?" Tian Chanzi was silent, because he couldn't make up his mind. As for whether Tang Zheng was alive or dead, he couldn't guess. He took a deep breath, looked at Linger's anxious and worried face, and advised without confidence, "Linger, don't worry, that brat won't die so easily." Although he said so, he couldn't believe his own words. This was because he was completely unable to understand how Tang Zheng could survive under these conditions, especially under the precondition of having the Fire Qilin as a huge threat. Linger bit her lips, hesitated, and said, "I want to go down and save Master." "Don't, that's not a joke. This is magma, you'll melt if you go down and not even your bones will be left." Tian Chanzi hurriedly held her back, afraid that she would do something stupid. This little girl was really willing to give up her life for Tang Zheng. How could this brat's charm be so great? Tian Chanzi kept cursing in his heart, firmly holding on to her, not letting go. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, the sound of wind came from the hole above them, and several figures descended from the sky. A fragrant smell assailed their nostrils. It was Feng Shishir and the others. They were worried about Tang Zheng's safety, so they chased after him at the same time. They were really not afraid of encountering danger. Fortunately, the space in the Earth's core was big enough, so even if there were a few people standing there, it didn't feel crowded. Tian Chanzi, on the other hand, felt a headache coming on. He looked helplessly at the group of orioles and swallows and said, "Why did you all come down too? Don't you know how dangerous this place is?" A few people's gazes swept around, clearly looking for Tang Zheng's figure, but in the end, they did not find him at all. Yi Dingdang was anxious and took the lead to ask, "Where is Tang Zheng? Where did he go?" The others echoed, "Yes, where did he go?" Linger pointed at the boiling magma below and said, "Master went down." Ah! Cries of surprise rose and fell one after another. Everyone's faces were filled with shock as they asked, "How did he fall?" "Master requested to go down," Linger explained. "He wants to absorb the yang qi from the Earth's core to achieve the effect of extreme yang producing yin." "Isn't this nonsense? What will be left if he goes down?" Everyone was anxious. Feng Shishir bit her lips until a trace of blood appeared. Without saying a word, she directly rushed into the magma. Tian Chanzi saw this and shouted, "Stop!" He had no choice but to let go of Linger and fly down. He grabbed Feng Shishir and said earnestly, "Disciple, you are seeking death, do you know that? If he's not here, then what's the point of me living?" Feng Shishir said painfully. Tian Chanzi felt a headache coming on. He sternly ordered, "I am your master. Don't tell me you don't even listen to your master's words? Live well for me. You are not allowed to commit suicide." As his voice fell, another person fell down. Tian Chanzi anxiously shouted and hurriedly pulled the other person, shouting, "Do you also want to commit suicide?" Yi Dingdang said with red eyes, "I am not your disciple. I don't need to listen to you." Tian Chanzi was so angry that he stamped his feet. He looked around and found that the others seemed to have the idea of rushing down. Immediately he flew into a rage and said, "Do you think that this is suicide? You are so wrong. Are you all idiots? Have you forgotten that Tang Zheng can always turn danger into safety? Since this is his own choice, his own decision, then he must have confidence. If you all rush down and you all die, then what's the point of him living? Do you want him to live in self-blame and pain for the rest of his life? Is this the so-called love you keep on talking about?" Tian Chanzi did not leave any face. Every word was like a gem piercing blood, enlightening the apathetic. Everyone was suddenly stunned and stopped thinking of rushing into the magma. Feng Shishir said with grievance, "Master, I was wrong. I won't rush down." Yi Dingding nodded and lowered her head, saying, "I was wrong too. Let go of my hand." The despair in the others' eyes lessened a lot, and a little hope was ignited. Tian Chanzi was relieved. The words just now were so enlightening that he actually believed it a little. "Tang Zheng, you are a jinx. Knowing that so many beauties are willing to die for you, your life is really worth it." Tian Chanzi's heart was filled with emotion. Although he kept encouraging Tang Zheng to absorb other people's pure yin energy, Tang Zheng did not stop at the surface. Instead, he used sincerity in exchange for sincerity. The results proved that Tang Zheng was right. When a person gave sincerity, they would often receive sincerity. If it was fake or even used, how could there be so many gains? Everyone dispelled the idea of dying for love and stared at the rolling magma. They all had the same question in their hearts. What happened to Tang Zheng? What kind of scene was under the magma? Taking advantage of everyone calming down, Tian Chanzi told everyone about what happened just now so that the fire Qilin would not appear and cause everyone to panic. Hearing that the fire Qilin had also entered the magma, everyone became even more worried. The rolling magma blocked everyone's line of sight, but it could not stop the fire Qilin. It was like a fish in water as it moved stealthily through the magma, looking for the source of the commotion. It was very puzzled. There were actually people who could survive in the magma. This was completely out of its expectations. It could move freely in the magma, because it was a natural divine beast. It accompanied the magma and absorbed the energy in the Earth's core to survive. The magma was like water to a fish and air to a human. The deeper the magma went, the brighter the red light became. It was even a little dazzling, but it did not have any effect on the fire qilin. It even widened its eyes and stared straight at the fiery red light. Its pupils were also dyed red, but it did not feel dazzling at all. Suddenly, the fire qilin's pupils shrank. It finally found its target and revealed an expression of relief. This was because it saw that the target was rapidly melting. His muscles had already disappeared, leaving behind only the white bones. At this moment, even the bones were melting bit by bit. The fire qilin let out a strange laugh, as if laughing at the other party for overestimating himself and daring to step into the Earth's core. Did he really think that he was the same as the fire qilin? Now not even dregs were left. It was satisfied to admire this scene. It was only waiting for it to completely melt. Then, it would go up and take care of the others. But when it thought of the main root of the tree of life, it had a headache. In addition, it had a question in its heart. Since this person was about to melt, how did the magma's movement just now cause it? To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1640. The fire qilin could not understand, and did not have time to think about it, because the sudden change attracted its attention. That set of white bones had already completely melted, but there were still 4 things left. A heart that kept beating non-stop, a meridian that ran through the body, a treasured sword that glittered with cold light, and a spherical object. This object was the purple mansion. It was completely purple and slightly transparent, and could be vaguely seen. The Yuaning was quietly lying inside. Ha! The fire qilin opened its eyes wide. It had never seen such a miraculous scene. It could not help but scratch its head, not understanding the situation. It took large strides forward and extended its claws, trying to test it. But before its claws could touch the target, the hidden profound sword burst out with a resplendent and sharp sword light, letting out a resounding sword cry. The hidden profound sword had a spirit and sword spirit. When it realized that its master was in danger, it automatically protected its master and instinctively launched a counterattack. Shwa! A ray of light slashed towards the fire qilin. The fire qilin waved its claws to block, and coincidentally collided with the sword light, splashing out a long string of sparks. The fire qilin roared. Its underestimation led to serious consequences. The sharp pain from its claws made it very angry. When it looked carefully, its claws cracked open. Wasn't this plucking the hair from a tiger's head? If this could be tolerated, what could not? The fire qilin roared at the hidden profound sword. The surrounding magma quickly gathered like a big water ball, and with a whoosh, it flew out. Boom! The magma was about to hit the beating heart, but the hidden profound sword flew out. A curtain of light fell, protecting the heart and the main meridian. This main meridian was formed from the dragon vein. It was extraordinary, so even the magma could not melt it. The sword light blocked the magma's attack. In an instant, there seemed to be a vacuum in the center of the earth. The fire qilin was thoroughly angry. Ever since it was born, it had never seen such a scene. It was really shocked and angry. Its divine might was seriously challenged. How preposterous! Whoosh! It dove down towards the hidden profound sword like a ray of light. Not only was it fast, but it was also very fierce. Boom! With a loud sound, the magma violently rolled, setting off a huge wave. Whoosh! Huge waves soared into the sky. The people outside were shocked and hurriedly hid in the cave. They watched as the magma melted everything in its path. The surrounding rock walls melted, and the space in the core of the earth became even more spacious and huge. Everyone turned pale with fright, not understanding what was going on. Tian Chanzi had an idea and said, "That's great." The others looked at him blankly, but a few smart people gradually understood and showed joy. Li Xiaotian couldn't wait and said, "It must be Tang Zheng, otherwise there wouldn't be such a big movement. He's definitely not dead." Everyone suddenly realized that this sentence had given them great hope. Just as Tian Chanzi had predicted, Tang Zheng would not die so easily. Everyone stretched their necks, trying to see through the magma. Then what should we do? Lu Qingmei asked worriedly. Tian Chanzi hesitated for a moment and shook his head regretfully. There's nothing we can do. We can only pray that Tang Zheng can deal with this difficult situation. Immediately, everyone's expression became gloomy. They silently prayed for Tang Zheng in their hearts. Many people had the same thought. If the Empyrean fairy was here, perhaps they wouldn't be so helpless. Originally, many people were somewhat against the Empyrean fairy and didn't want her to join their ranks. But after encountering such a situation, this kind of idea couldn't help but waver. Although Tang Zheng had many women by his side, none of them had a very powerful cultivation. They could even stand shoulder to shoulder with him. The Empyrean fairy was the most suitable candidate. Was it really necessary to let the Empyrean fairy mix into everyone's team and become Tang Zheng's right-hand woman? In the magma, the fire Qilin's attack didn't completely break the hidden mysterious sword's defense. In fact, the hidden mysterious sword was in imminent danger. After all, it didn't have a master to control it. It could only rely on its instincts to counterattack. Although its power wasn't weak, it was still not enough to deal with a mythical beast like the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin stopped and opened its eyes wide. It stared at the hidden mysterious sword and behind it. Suddenly, its pupils shrank as it saw a very magical scene. Bloodlines spread out from the Qiyu's heart like blood vessels. They quickly swam around Tang Zheng's body and finally reached the Zifu, completely enveloping it. The Zifu seemed to be wrapped in a bloody light. The purple light was suffused with a red color. It was very magical. Whoosh! Another ray of light emitted from the main meridians and wrapped around these blood vessels. Little bits of flesh attached to the bloody light started to grow. With the hidden mysterious sword light wrapped around it, there was no magma that could hurt it. It was the best protection. Although the fire Qilin didn't understand what was going on, it realized that the situation was not good. It couldn't let the opponent continue. Roar! It roared and its four hooves ignited. With a whoosh, it rushed toward the hidden mysterious sword. The hidden profound sword hummed as it once again tried to defend against the attack, but in the end, it was unable to do so. With a kacha sound, its defense crumbled as the sword light shattered into pieces. Magma flowed towards Tang Zheng from all directions. Tang Zheng was completely wrapped in the magma. Waves of white gas appeared around him, but it didn't stop this at all. His body was rapidly growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. On the contrary, the red light in the magma was absorbed by Tang Zheng. It was like a thin line wrapped around Tang Zheng's body. In a place of extreme yang qi was abundant. He was absorbing the yang qi in the earth's core. It was all gathered toward his body, as if it was going to fill his body. This was Tang Zheng's plan. He was going to die and fight to live. Then he would use a large amount of yang qi to create yin qi. This would allow him to survive. The fire Qilin couldn't understand this scene, but it knew that this scene was harmful to it. It relied on absorbing yang qi to increase its cultivation and power. Now someone was trying to steal food from the tiger's mouth. How could it agree? Suddenly, its eyes almost popped out. Its pupils seemed to be on fire. It kept roaring and rushed toward Tang Zheng. Whoosh! The hidden mysterious sword was eager to protect its master. How could it let it succeed? It quickly returned to defend. The two sides fought fiercely again. As time passed, Tang Zheng's body grew more and more. The fire Qilin didn't have time to think. Its attack power increased greatly. Clang! In the end, the hidden mysterious sword couldn't stop the fire Qilin, and was sent flying. Then, the fire Qilin aggressively rushed toward Tang Zheng with a belly full of anger. Its sharp claws were completely revealed. They flickered with a fiery red light. The flames on its body also whizzed out. Under its threat, Tang Zheng was in danger. It seemed that he didn't have the power to resist. The magma was separated by itself. There was no way to resist its attack. Buzz! The hidden mysterious sword was eager to protect its master. It cried loudly, but there was no way. It was too late to save him. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1641. The fire Qilin's flames enveloped Tang Zheng as if it wanted to burn him to ashes. Pop! The fire Qilin's sharp claws followed closely behind and ruthlessly slashed at Tang Zheng. The magma and flames parted on their own, as they were unable to withstand the power of the claws. The fire Qilin's eyes flashed with complacency as if it could foresee the scene of its opponent being split into two by its sharp claws. However, things did not go as it wished. Its claws seemed to have encountered an unbreakable layer of defense. With a dang sound, it was actually bounced back. This scene shocked the fire Qilin. Its eyes widened even more as it was unable to accept this scene. However, its reaction was lightning fast. The second round of attacks came unexpectedly, ferocious and lightning fast. Bang! Its claws accurately hit Tang Zheng. Layers of waves gushed out from his body and spread in all directions. Circles of ripples also appeared in the magma. This movement set off a huge wave outside, scaring the others so much that they did not dare to leave the cave. However, in the next second, the fire Qilin's eyes seemed to be about to pop out. Its target was actually unharmed. On the contrary, more and more flesh appeared on his body, as if it was about to finish growing. In addition, his body was densely packed with red lines. These were not blood vessels, but the yang qi absorbed from the magma in the earth's core. The fire Qilin could not be more familiar with this. It angrily roared. This uninvited guest actually dared to snatch food from its mouth while it was powerless to do anything. It turned its eyes and suddenly opened its bloody mouth, aimed at Tang Zheng, and bit down. Its mouth quickly grew larger, and not long after, it turned into an existence like a black hole. With a so sound, it swallowed Tang Zheng in one bite. Buzz! Seeing this scene, the hidden mysterious sword was angry and anxious. That was its master, and it was actually swallowed just like that. How could it sit and watch? Whoosh! The sword light expanded as the hidden mysterious sword instinctively activated its power to the extreme. It turned into a ray of light. Even in the magma's core, the sword light was exceptionally dazzling, completely suppressing the other rays of light. The fire Qilin turned its head and discovered the terrifying attack of the hidden mysterious sword. It gathered all its power to defend. Rumble! The surrounding magma seemed to have a life of its own as it quickly converged towards the fire Qilin. In an instant, it turned into a thick wall of magma, giving off a feeling of being as solid as a fortress. Boom! This defense blocked the hidden mystic sword. The hidden mystic sword was pressed against the lava. Every inch it moved forward was extremely difficult, as if it had used up all of its strength. The magma was being worn down, but the hidden mystic sword was still moving forward. The fire Qilin was not worried about the hidden sword at all. Instead, it was immensely proud of itself, like a victorious general. Daring to invade its territory, now you know how powerful it is. It entered its stomach and became its meal. Then, it had to return to the surface and get rid of the other fish that had escaped the net. Whoosh! It rushed up, and the magma parted like seawater. The hidden mystic sword seemed to have sensed its intention, and tried to change its direction to attack it. However, how could it let the hidden Xian sword succeed? With a thought, the magma surrounded the hidden Xian sword from all directions. Like a cage, it trapped the hidden Xian sword in an instant, sealing off all of its escape routes. There was no way to stop its movements. Whoosh! The magma parted on its own, and the fire Qilin rushed up to the sky, turning into a ray of light. It rushed to the surface of the magma, and saw its target in the cave. Tianchanzi and the others had been nervously watching the situation. When they saw a figure rush out, their eyes widened, and their hearts could not help but tighten. But when they saw clearly that it was the fire Qilin, they were shocked and terrified. An ominous premonition attacked their hearts. The fire Qilin rushed out safe and sound. Could it be that Tang Zheng had met with an accident? The flame of hope that had been ignited was extinguished in an instant. Their eyes dimmed, and they stared blankly at the fire Qilin. The flame of anger gradually burned in the depths of their eyes, and quickly filled their eyes. Tang Zheng had been killed by the fire Qilin, so they must avenge him. Even if they had to die, they would not hesitate. So one by one, they did not shrink back. With a whoosh, they flew out of the cave and stood in the air, confronting the fire Qilin. Tian Chanzi looked at this scene and was really frightened. He shouted loudly, "Come back!" But no one listened to him. Each and every one of the girls was not inferior to the men. They were valiant and heroic, and they angrily confronted the fire Qilin. Tian Chanzi sighed with mixed feelings and said, "Ah, crazy, all of them are crazy. They really are a group of people who are not afraid of death. I have lived for more than 1,000 years. It seems that I have lived to the end. Tang Zheng, you stinking brat, you have really killed me." After saying this, he also flew out of the cave in a flash. He stood side by side with the girls and stared at the fire Qilin without fear. The fire Qilin's eyes showed contempt, but there was also a trace of confusion. It was very clear that these people were not its opponents, but they were not afraid of death at all. They did not know how to run away, but dared to confront it. This kind of suicidal behavior was unreasonable in its eyes. But it did not look into it. Instead, its eyes showed a cold light, as if it was going to melt these people into nothing. "Kill!" the girls shouted in unison. They all attacked at the same time. All kinds of attacks were sent towards the fire Qilin's body. The fire Qilin's eyes were frivolous. It did not care at all. The only person it was on guard against was Ling. It was very afraid of the main root of the tree of life in her hands. This was the so-called mutual promotion and restraint. Among the things in the Earth's core, only the main root could restrain the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin was also very clear about this point. Therefore, it took the lead to attack Ling. It had to get rid of this most troublesome target first. Then the others would naturally not be a concern. It ignored the other people's attacks. Its whole body was covered in raging flames. Once those attacks came close to the flames, they would turn into nothing. There was no way to threaten it. Step by step, it approached Ling. It was like a tiger watching its prey. Its eyes were also firmly locked onto her. Ling grasped the main root tightly. Her palms were sweating. With a shout, the main root was like a whip, fiercely lashing out. The fire Qilin was always on guard. It was accumulating power and waiting to attack. How could it be hit so easily? It dodged with a whoosh. The main root whipped on top of the rolling magma. The Earth's core seemed to be split into two. The magma automatically parted to two sides, revealing the scene in the depths of the Earth's core. The scene in the Earth's core attracted many people's attention. They only saw a sword light flash past. The hidden profound sword flew up. The main root's attack even drew away the magma that was confining it. The hidden profound sword escaped and soared into the sky. It directly slashed towards the fire Qilin, as if it was an irreconcilable enmity. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1642. Everyone noticed the movement of the hidden profound sword and was shocked. The relationship between the hidden profound sword and Tang Zheng could not be clearer. Now that only the hidden profound sword was left, didn't that mean that Tang Zheng met with an accident? Originally, everyone still had a trace of luck in their hearts, but now it was completely gone. Everyone's expression was extremely desperate. Whoosh! The hidden Xian sword slashed towards the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin's two claws moved forward and grabbed the hidden Xian sword. The flames from its claws and the sword light from the hidden Xian sword suppressed each other. Roar! Suddenly, the fire Qilin let out a shocking roar. The flames on its claws increased explosively and suppressed the sword light of the hidden profound sword. It caused the hidden profound sword's attack to deviate. The hidden profound sword brushed past the fire Qilin and flew out like a meteor. Boom! The hidden profound sword shot into the rock wall, leaving behind a big hole. It was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. No one knew how deep it flew before it disappeared. Seeing this scene, everyone's heart trembled. Without prior agreement, they shouted themselves hoarse, "Kill!" Waves of angry shouts resounded through the Earth's core. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, multicolored treasures once again greeted the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin was not afraid of everyone's attacks. The only thing it was afraid of was the main root, especially when it saw the main root split the Earth's core magma in two. That overflowing power and aura made it even more afraid. Whoosh! The main root flew back and once again whipped towards the fire Qilin. The other people's attacks also arrived unexpectedly. The fire qilin kicked the air and directly crashed into the multicolored treasures. Dang dang dang. A series of muffled sounds rang out. The treasures flew out randomly. There were even treasures that fell into the Earth's core magma and melted into liquid, completely destroyed. The treasures being destroyed or damaged made many people feel the same way. It was as if they were struck by lightning. One after another, their faces turned pale. The fire qilin's attack was not only that. It turned into a flame and flew past everyone with a whoosh. Everyone tried to dodge, but there was no way to dodge. In front of the fire qilin, they were like children without the strength to truss a chicken. Pung pung pung, one after another, graceful figures were sent flying, crashing into the walls in disarray. Only then did they stop spitting out blood. There were even some who almost fell into the lava, their lives hanging by a thread. Screams and cries rang out everywhere. Although everyone was prepared to die, the reality still deeply shocked them. He was filled with regret for being unable to withstand a single blow. Only Tian Chanzi and Linger were lucky enough to escape. Tian Chanzi relied on the Taya sword in his hand to barely resist the fire Kirin. Linger took the initiative to attack, but the fire Kirin didn't want to fight, so she couldn't do anything. The power of the main root was great, but it did not have its own consciousness. Linger's cultivation was much lower than the fire qilin's, so when the fire qilin was on full alert, she could not really threaten the fire qilin. The fire qilin was in high spirits as it looked at its defeated opponents. It shook its head and wagged its tail, and its eyes were filled with contempt. Linger saw that her companions were being humiliated and became anxious. Her attacks became more and more chaotic, giving the fire qilin an opportunity. The fire qilin looked for an opening, and a flame flashed in its eyes. It attacked like thunder, sweeping out its claws. Linger was swept away. If not for the main root's defense, her head would have been cut off. This thrilling scene made people scream loudly. Their hearts were in their throats, and their breathing seemed to have stopped. In the end, Tian Chanzi was the only one left. His palms were sweating, and his eyes gradually turned from panic to determination. He took a deep breath and shouted, "Laozi will also risk it all for you. In the next life, I will also be a good man. Tang Zheng, you better remember, this life of mine is for you." Swoosh. The Taya sword soared into the sky and turned into a huge sword light, almost occupying the entire space, and shrouding the fire qilin's head. The fire qilin's mouth made a whistling sound. Apparently it was angry. Its eyes were burning with flames, and the flames on its body were also rising. It was not inferior to the Taya sword at all. Cut! Tian Chanzi roared, and the Taya sword fell down heavily. The fire qilin soared into the sky, and the flames on its head soared into the sky, turning into a huge claw. Clang! With a loud sound, the shockwave spread in all directions and hit the wall, causing the rocks to rustle and fall down. Puff! Tian Chanzi spat out a mouthful of blood, and his expression became gloomy. He staggered back and only stopped when he hit the rock again. The fire qilin's momentum was like a rainbow, and its arrogance was monstrous. Although it also retreated a lot, and only then did it resolve the attack of the Taya sword, it still won. It looked contemptuously at Tian Chanzi and the others, as if it wanted to give the last blow. Everyone was defeated, and they looked at each other in dismay. Their faces were ashen, but no one retreated. They looked like they were ready to sacrifice themselves. Their hope had been completely shattered. Without Tang Zheng, there was not much meaning in living. The fire qilin approached the crowd step by step. Seeing that no one retreated, its eyes revealed a puzzled look, as if it did not understand why this group of people was not afraid of death. Feng Shishir could not help but hold Yi Dingdong's hand tightly. Yi Dingdong looked at her, nodded slightly, clenched her teeth, and then held Lu Qingmei's hand. Lu Qingmei nodded her head in tacit understanding. Her eyes were red, and her expression was resolute. She then held Marshall's hand. Marshall turned his head to look at Li Xiaotian. The two of them had always been in a competitive relationship. Since they were young, one was the head disciple of the Marshall sect, and the other was the holy maiden of Li Palace. They were both outstanding people in their sects, and were also the focus of everyone's attention. Naturally, they also became the targets of comparison. You chase and I chase, each with their own advantages and disadvantages, each with their own gains and losses. In fact, on the matter of Tangzheng, the two of them also had the intention of competing. One wanted to control the Li Palace, while the other wanted to stay in Dianan and share Tangzheng's worries. However, at this moment, the barrier in their hearts had collapsed. They had buried the hatchet and become comrades in arms. Therefore, Marshall naturally held Li Xiaotian's hand. Li Xiaotian was not afraid. Her expression was indifferent, as if even if the sky collapsed to her, her expression would not change. Instead, a mysterious smile appeared on her face. Li Xiaotian took the opportunity to grab Linger's hand. Linger's heart tightened, and then relaxed. She looked at Li Xiaotian, nodded her head, and took a deep breath. She no longer had the main root in her hand. In that attack, the main root had already flown out of her hand. The fire qilin did not give her a chance to get close to the main root. Therefore, her advantage had been completely obliterated. However, her heart was not lonely, because with a few good sisters, even if they went to the Yellow Springs, they would not be lonely. In fact, they could even reunite with Tangzheng. When they thought of this, they did not have the slightest bit of fear. Each and every one of them was unafraid of death. Tian Chanzi's gaze swept past them one by one. His mood was extremely agitated, as if he was also infected by their imposing manner. He straightened his back, puffed out his chest, and faced the approaching fire qilin. He was unafraid of death. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1643. The fire qilin closed in step by step until it was only inches away from the crowd. The large mouth spat out a blazing aura that hit their faces, causing them to feel a burning pain. The fire qilin moved its front two hooves, as if it was preparing to launch its final charge. So, it turned into a flame and fiercely pounced towards the crowd. That rainbow-like aura caused everyone's liver and gallbladder to tremble, as if their hearts were about to rush out of their chests. It caused everyone's breathing to become heavy and extremely unsmooth. Everyone's eyes were wide open as the fire qilin's figure rapidly enlarged in their eyes. In the next second, it seemed as if they would be swallowed by that bloody mouth. The fire qilin believed that victory was in its grasp, and that there would not be any more variables. Suddenly, its body stiffened as it slammed on the brakes and stopped in midair, only a short distance away from the crowd. Everyone was shocked as they did not know why the fire qilin stopped in front of them. Could it be that it wanted to taunt them? Was there a need? Everyone stared at the fire qilin. The fire qilin's body was covered in flames as it fiercely struggled and roared with all its might. Roar! A scorching wave of air rushed out from its mouth and swept towards the crowd like a fiery tornado. Everyone was blown away by the wind, but they keenly noticed that the roar seemed to be filled with pain and struggle. What was going on? They did not know. After all, the fire qilin had the upper hand, so it should not have gone crazy halfway. The fire qilin rolled in midair, bringing with it a large amount of flames as if the air had been ignited. At the same time, the magma below also began to roll, setting off waves after waves that were shocking to the core. Rays of fiery red light converged towards the fire qilin from all directions, especially the rays of light that floated out from the magma. They were like ribbons that completely converged on the fire qilin's body. The fire qilin kept roaring. Its voice was like thunder that spread throughout the space, rumbling without stopping. Everyone could not help but cover their ears as this deafening sound caused their hearts to sway, and their minds to fall into disarray. Something seems to have happened to the fire qilin. Tian Chanzi had a flash of inspiration as he thoughtfully said. The others deeply agreed as everyone could see that something was wrong. The fire qilin's unforeseen event was already very clear. But what kind of unforeseen event could actually cause the powerful fire qilin to become like this? Linger stared at the churning lava and the red light that surrounded the fire qilin. Her heart stirred as she asked, "Do you think it's master? Tangzheng?" Everyone was shocked. There was no other explanation for all these changes. The only explanation was probably Tangzheng. Is it him? Everyone was skeptical. Linger, on the other hand, was even more convinced. She nodded stubbornly. I believe that master must have done something. Wasn't he already gone? This was the question in everyone's mind. However, there was a strong impulse in his heart. He would rather believe Linger's words and believe that Tang Zheng had done something. The fire qilin continued to struggle in midair. The flames on its body were actually extinguished, shrinking inward and disappearing into its body. Only the streaks of red light continued to converge on the fire qilin from all directions. They turned into thousands of threads that completely wrapped around the fire qilin's body, causing its struggle to become slower and slower. Only its deafening roar was still ringing out. Boom. Suddenly, a loud sound came from the wall. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly turned their heads to look. They saw that the sound from the wall was getting louder and louder. It was as if something was about to rush out. What is it? This question popped up in everyone's mind at the same time. Boom. Rocks flew everywhere. A large hole appeared in the wall. A streak of light flew out from the hole. Together with the rocks that were flying everywhere, it carried a force of 10,000 pounds and pierced towards the fire qilin. Everyone saw this streak of light. It was very familiar. Cries of surprise rang out one after another. The hidden mysterious sword. The hidden mysterious sword was originally slapped into the rock by the fire qilin and disappeared without a trace. No one would have thought that it would fly out again. Moreover, its attack power was so strong that it shocked everyone. The hidden mysterious sword shook everyone's spirit. They all thought of one thing at the same time. In this world, only Tang Zheng could control the hidden mysterious sword. Coupled with the strange reaction of the fire qilin, could it be that all of this was done by Tang Zheng? Otherwise, it did not make sense. This meant that Tang Zheng was not dead. Before everyone could fully understand what was going on, the hidden mysterious sword had already fiercely pierced into the fire qilin. Previously, the fire qilin could dodge the attack of the hidden mysterious sword, but this time, it was impossible. Its movements were restricted, and the attack of the hidden mysterious sword was so fast and fierce. How could he dodge the attack? The hidden mysterious sword pierced into the fire qilin's body, and it roared angrily again, struggling nonstop. However, the red light that wrapped around its body firmly bound it, and there was no way for it to break free. The hidden mysterious sword did not stop. Instead, it slowly entered the fire qilin's body. In the end, it even disappeared into the fire qilin's body. Seeing that, Li Xiaotian had an idea. With a flash of light in his hand, he knocked an arrow and aimed the sun-shooting arrow at the fire qilin. The sun-shooting arrow and the heaven-shocking bow were sacred tools with extraordinary power, but that also depended on the person. In the past, they could kill the soul of the golden crow, but when facing the fire qilin, Li Xiaotian's cultivation was still unable to hurt it. In the end, he followed in everyone's footsteps and lost to the fire qilin. This was not because the sacred tool was not good enough, but because the cultivation of the person using the sacred tool was too different from the fire qilin. The fire qilin was a divine beast, not inferior to the dragon clan. This fire qilin had cultivated in the earth's core for who knows how many years, so its strength was naturally extraordinary. This was why it was so easy to win despite being outnumbered. But that was then, and this was now. At this moment, the fire qilin was already injured by the hidden mysterious sword, and its strength was greatly reduced. Li Xiaotian saw the opportunity and used the sun-shooting arrow to attack. Wang. The bowstring trembled, and the sun-shooting arrow left the bowstring, quickly, accurately, and ruthlessly shooting into the fire qilin's body. This time it had no way to dodge. Yay! Seeing that the sun-shooting arrow had hit the fire qilin, Li Xiaotian could not help but wave his fist, so excited that his cheeks were flushed. Seeing this, Tian Chanzi could not sit still and wait for death. Dragging his tired body, he shouted, "Attack! Take this opportunity and attack it fiercely!" Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Streaks of colorful magic treasures dragged long tails of flames in the air, like meteors, hitting the fire qilin at the same time. Boom boom boom. Waves of violent explosions erupted from the fire qilin's body, and the sky was filled with light shooting in all directions, shaking the mountains and the earth. Ling did not stay idle. Her figure flashed, and once again grabbed the main root of the tree of life, shaking the main root. As if shaking out a few flowers with a whoosh, the main root wrapped around the fire qilin and tied it up like a dumpling. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1644. The fire qilin suffered repeated attacks and was riddled with wounds. There were even a few large holes on its body. It was also confined by the main root of the Tree of Life, and could not move at all. The hidden mysterious sword merged into its body, but the sword light came out of its body and became more brilliant and sharp. Thousands of different lights wrapped around the fire qilin. The fire qilin roared again and stretched its neck, its body straightened. Suddenly, the roar stopped abruptly as if someone was stuck in its throat, and it could not make a single sound. What was going on? Everyone was stunned. Was it going to die just like that? Was it really that simple? A crack appeared on the fire qilin's armor like scales. Then, like a spider web, the cracks quickly spread and covered its entire body in a short while. It was like an exquisite piece of porcelain that had been hit and cracked inch by inch. This scene deeply shocked everyone. Everyone was frightened and stared with their eyes wide open. They did not understand what was going on. However, they seemed to have a feeling that something was about to happen. Boom! A loud sound came from the fire qilin's body as if something had cracked and exploded. A look of despair appeared in the fire qilin's eyes. The red light that was originally wrapped around the fire qilin spread into its body through the cracks, and disappeared as if it was absorbed by something. The red light was the yang qi essence contained in the earth's core. It had reached a level that could be seen with the naked eye, and was also a delicacy for the fire qilin. However, at this moment, although the yang qi essence entered its body, it was not used by the fire qilin. Instead, it was absorbed by someone else. Not only that, the fire qilin also found that the yang qi essence in its body was being consumed bit by bit, as if it was being sucked away by a huge attraction. Absorbing the essence from its body was equivalent to nibbling away its life bit by bit. It was needless to say how difficult it was to achieve this. The fire qilin never thought that it would be like this, but it was really happening. Its liver and gallbladder were torn apart, and it truly experienced intense fear. Its senses were much sharper than other people's, and it quickly understood why all of this had happened. It was extremely regretful that it had swallowed that person in one gulp. Without a doubt, the source of all this was that person. It was definitely him who was causing trouble. Otherwise, how could he have ended up in such a sorry state? It was even more impossible for him to be struck by those powerful magic treasures and lose half his life. It was even more impossible for him to resist the other party's encroachment. It still wanted to struggle, but it couldn't move at all. It could only let the other party nibble away at it. Its deduction was correct. All of this was indeed caused by Tang Zheng. After he was swallowed into the fire qilin's stomach, he did not die. On the contrary, the fire qilin's stomach was like a paradise to him instead of a pit of fire. The fire qilin was born by devouring the yang qi essence in the magma. Its stomach was like another mass of magma, and it was no less powerful than the magma in the earth's core. If anyone else had entered its stomach, they would have been refined long ago, leaving nothing behind. But Tang Zheng was different. Not only did he practice the indestructible body, but he also needed all of this now. The fire qilin's stomach just happened to give him the best environment, and this was what he had been searching for. Then he quickly adjusted his state and absorbed the yang qi essence of the fire qilin. Although Tang Zheng still couldn't move, this was a subconscious action. He didn't need to control it at all. It was natural, and success came naturally. The fire qilin had too much yang qi essence. In addition, all of its energy was focused on Tian Chanzi and the others, so it didn't notice that Tang Zheng had absorbed a little yang qi essence. But by the time it discovered something, it was already too late. Not only was the yang qi in its body attracted, but even the yang qi essence in the magma in the earth's core was also attracted. It turned into streaks of red light, passing through its body and being absorbed into Tang Zheng's body. In a short period of time, Tang Zheng had absorbed too much, and the effect was very obvious. It proved that his judgment was right, and the method was feasible. Yin and yang countered each other. and extreme yang gave birth to yin. A little bit of pure yin energy actually appeared in his body, like a clear spring. The pure yin energy was like spring water, flowing little by little into his 8 extraordinary meridians. His mobility was recovering bit by bit, and a black hole appeared in his palm. Sky swallowing technique. He used the absorption technique of the sky swallowing technique and quickly absorbed the yang qi essence of the fire qilin, faster than before. The fire qilin suffered a series of painful attacks and was almost half dead. It had no way to resist Tang Zheng and could only watch him do whatever he wanted. It was like a fish on the chopping board, at Tang Zheng's disposal. Tang Zheng needed too much yang qi essence, so he did not dare to hold back in the slightest, nor did he dare to show mercy. If he gave the fire qilin the slightest chance, it would definitely counterattack and kill him unprepared. At that time, his advantage would be gone, and he would fall into a desperate situation. He absolutely could not do that. In the fierce battle just now, he clearly saw the danger that everyone was facing. How could he take such a risk? Although the fire qilin was a divine beast, it possessed great strength. If it could be subdued and used, it would definitely be a great help. However, he didn't dare to take the risk and try to subdue the fire qilin. The only way was to continuously absorb its power and supply it to himself. One of his hands was already able to move freely, and the hidden profound sword was tightly gripped in his palm. The hidden profound sword was connected to its master, and in an instant, it received a boost. Its power increased explosively, and the sword light was as bright as the stars. Whoosh! Whoosh! Streaks of sword light spiraled in all directions, cutting the internal organs of the fire qilin. Roar! The fire qilin roared in pain, but to no avail. The sword light pierced through the cracks in its body, and immediately, its entire body was enveloped by the sword light. Seeing this scene, everyone's spirit was shaken. How could they not understand what was going on? Tang Zheng, it's really him. Yes, it's him. Too powerful. I knew he wouldn't abandon us. Nothing will happen to him. Some people were so excited that they were incoherent, and some were crying tears of joy. Coming back from death's door, everyone was like riding a roller coaster, flying from the abyss to the sky and back to the clouds. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief at the same time, and their expressions relaxed. Since Tang Zheng had made a desperate counterattack, the scales of victory must have been tilted. Moreover, everyone was not stupid. From the scene in front of them, they could already determine who had the upper hand. Without a doubt, Tang Zheng had the upper hand. Every dog has its day. The fire qilin was completely at a disadvantage, and had fallen into a passive situation. Boom! With a loud sound, an explosion sounded from the fire qilin's body. Then, the fire qilin's entire body exploded, and fell into a ball of fire. The raging fire spread in all directions, and wherever it passed, the rocks immediately melted into magma. Its power was enormous. Retreat! Tian Chanzi roared, and protected everyone as they hurriedly retreated into the cave, but the cave was also rapidly melting. Chapter 1645. The cave melted and turned into a water curtain cave. The magma dripped down and turned into a bead curtain. But through this bead curtain, one could vaguely see a shocking scene. The fire qilin was completely enveloped in flames, and its body could no longer be seen. The flames seemed to have penetrated the core of the earth. The raging flames seemed to burn endlessly. After an unknown amount of time, which seemed to be as long as a century, there was movement in the flames. Everyone instantly widened their eyes and stared straight at the flames. A figure walked out from the flames. Everyone's hearts tightened. Could it be that the fire qilin had walked out again? Wouldn't that be a waste of effort? Finally, the figure became clearer and clearer. Everyone could finally see it clearly. They were beaming with joy and couldn't help but exclaim loudly, Tang Zheng. Yes, the figure that walked out was actually Tang Zheng. He walked out with a majestic gait and was in high spirits. He was no longer a wooden figure that couldn't move. Everyone ignored the power of the flames and rushed forward shouting, Tang Zheng, you really succeeded. Are you all right? At first, everyone didn't know if this method would work or not. It was only because Tang Zheng insisted on doing it that they agreed to fulfill his wish. Now it seemed that he was right. Extreme Yang gave birth to Yin. This method could really succeed. Looking at the people who didn't care about their own safety and rushed towards him, a faint smile appeared on Tang Zheng's face. With a wave of his hand, the flames behind him were instantly extinguished. The magma in the core of the earth also calmed down and returned to its original tranquility. There was only a gurgling sound of bubbles. He took large strides to welcome everyone. The women didn't care about their shyness and rushed into his arms. Immediately, his large arms were stuffed. Everyone squeezed into his arms and didn't care about their shyness. Smelling the familiar scent on his body, they felt especially at ease. Tang Zheng hugged the women tightly in his arms. Even Linger was no exception. Linger stole a glance at him and sweetly leaned on his shoulder. Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes. This was simple and direct dog abuse. This brat had just walked out of the gates of hell, and so many people were already throwing themselves at him. He was the envy of others. Tang Zheng was also very moved. If it wasn't for his confidant who helped him without fear of danger, he was afraid that everything might not have gone so smoothly. Whether or not he could survive the crisis was also unknown. Moreover, he hadn't truly survived the crisis yet. After a long time, the women finally calmed down and reluctantly left his embrace. They glanced left and right, and everyone's eyes were filled with shyness. In any case, everyone had done the same thing, so they weren't that shy anymore. Tang Zheng looked at Tian Chanzi and turned his head away. He coughed and said, "You can turn around now." Tian Chanzi resentfully turned his head and fiercely glared at him. "You brat, you just can't stop. It's the new year, and you're causing so much trouble." Tang Zheng smiled and said, "I don't want to." "Then how are you now? Are you okay?" Tian Chanzi asked with concern. Tang Zheng's face sank. Everyone's heart trembled as they looked at him nervously. Could there be another problem? Tang Zheng said in a deep voice. This time, it was indeed the pure yang energy that caused trouble. Moreover, it was constantly accumulating. If everyone didn't treat me in time, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to keep my life. As for now, I can only temporarily control the pure yang energy because the earth's core and the fire Qilin's body contain enough yang qi. Extreme yang produces yin, so I can barely suppress the pure yang energy. However, it will definitely erupt in the future. At that time, there will be a huge crisis. These words were understated, but it was like thunder in everyone's ears. They originally thought that everything was fine, but they didn't expect there to be so many repercussions. Then what should we do? The women asked anxiously. Tang Zheng smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry, there will definitely be a way to completely solve this problem." The women looked at each other and thought of one person at the same time. That was the Empyrean fairy. Perhaps only her 9 saint body could completely solve this problem. However, everyone tacitly didn't mention it. Tang Zheng naturally knew about this method, but it wasn't as simple as eating and drinking. It was a matter of mutual consent and couldn't be forced. He wouldn't sacrifice others for his own survival, especially those close to him. What about the fire Qilin? Tian Chanzi asked curiously. Tang Zheng said disappointedly, "If it wasn't for the urgent situation, the fire Qilin is so powerful. It would be great to take it for my own use, but I don't dare to take this risk. Moreover, to truly achieve extreme yang producing yin and restore my mobility, I can only completely absorb the yang qi essence in its body. This is faster and more convenient than absorbing it from the magma in the earth's core. Without the yang qi essence, the fire Qilin will naturally cease to exist." Everyone suddenly realized. Tian Chanzi sighed. "I didn't expect that the legendary divine beast really exists, and it's in the earth's core. I'm afraid very few people would think of this." Li Xiaotian had an idea and said, "Since the fire Qilin lives in the earth's core, then what about other worlds? Are there fire Qilins in the earth's core?" As soon as these words were said, everyone's eyes lit up. The fire Qilin was powerful. If they could take it under their command, it would definitely be a new force. Originally, they didn't have any hope, but they didn't expect Li Xiaotian's words to wake them up. There were so many great worlds, and if other worlds also had Earth's cores, then wouldn't there also be fire cheilans? If they wanted a fire cheilan, then they could just go to the Earth's core in other worlds. Of course, this was just an idea. It wouldn't be easy to really achieve this. Everyone couldn't wait to leave this place and return to report the good news. However, Tang Zheng's gaze fell on Ling Er's hand. She was still tightly holding the Tree of Life's main root. He sighed thoughtfully. This is the Tree of Life's main root. It's really extraordinary. It can actually restrain the fire cheilan. As he spoke, he grabbed the main root. However, a strong rebound force hit his hand with a bang, causing him to withdraw his hand in pain. Seeing this, Ling Er hurriedly let go of the main root and asked with concern, "Master, I'm sorry. Did I hurt you?" Tang Zheng smiled and shook his head. "It's fine. Ling Er, you're really amazing. You're the only one who can freely control this main root, and its power is extraordinary." Ling Er breathed a sigh of relief and said shyly, "I was just lucky." "No, this is your unique talent, which is more powerful than ours. If you have the main root of the Tree of Life as a magical treasure, then your fighting strength will naturally increase rapidly," Tang Zheng said in a deep voice, his eyes shining as he stared at the main root of the Tree of Life. The main root had fallen back into the magma and was safe and sound in the rolling magma. Ling Er shook her head. "This is the Tree of Life's main root. How can I have the fortune to have it as a magic treasure?" "That's not necessarily true." Tang Zheng's gaze turned cold as he said meaningfully, "I wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. All the lovers in the world will get married. Follow my WeChat account, Tang Xiao. To read the latest novel, please visit the website." Chapter 1646. That might not be the case. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Could it be that he had a method, or rather, a method to forcefully cut off a section of the Tree of Life's main root? Tian Chanzi earnestly reminded, "Tang Zheng, the Tree of Life is related to the entire world. Once the main root is damaged, what if the Tree of Life is also damaged?" Ling Er reluctantly looked at the main root after hearing this and hurriedly nodded in agreement. "Senior is right. The Tree of Life is the most important. Master, I can use other magic treasures." Tang Zheng looked deeply at Ling Er and said, "You are fated with the Tree of Life. This is your destiny." After pausing for a moment, he stared at the main root and said, "Tree of Life, I know you are listening to me. Since Ling Er is fated with you, why don't you give her a section of the main root? This shouldn't be a big deal, right?" Hearing his words, everyone's expression trembled. They stared straight at the main root, as if waiting for some kind of reaction. However, there was no reaction. Everyone's heart suddenly sank. Ling Er's face flashed with disappointment, but she looked gratefully at Tang Zheng and said, "Master, let's go." Tang Zheng sighed inwardly. It seemed that his thinking was too simple. He wouldn't really touch the Tree of Life. Just as Tian Chanzi said, a slight move in one part could affect the situation, as the Tree of Life was too important to this world. Everyone walked to the entrance of the cave and prepared to go back the way they came. Suddenly, there was movement behind them. A wave of magma rose up like a huge wave. Everyone was shocked and stopped in their tracks. They saw the main root flickering in the huge wave and flying towards them. They were shocked. Could it be that the main root wanted to attack them? Could it be that Tang Zheng's words angered the Tree of Life? Shwa! A dazzling red light flickered on the main root. The following scene made everyone's eyes pop out. Everyone was dumbstruck and kept asking themselves, "What did I just see? Is this all real?" Of course, all of this was real. The main root of the Tree of Life actually broke off on its own. A section of the main root flew towards Ling Er. Ling Er covered her pink lips with both hands. She was so shocked that she couldn't say anything. The look in her eyes was also extremely complicated. The main root flew in front of her. She subconsciously reached out her hand, and the main root landed firmly in her palm. She stared blankly at the main root in her hand. For a moment, there were thousands of words stuck in her chest, but she couldn't say a single word. She abruptly raised her head and stared at the broken main root. She said excitedly, "Thank you, Tree of Life." The main root of the Tree of Life shook as if to say, "You're welcome." Then with a flash of light, the broken part started to grow again. Not long after, the main root regained its original appearance and a new section grew out. Tang Zheng also looked at this scene with surprise. He didn't expect the Tree of Life to be so generous as to give Ling a main root. Although the main root was very precious, only Linger could use it. Linger hugged the main root tightly in her arms. Looking at the main root that had grown back completely, she heaved a sigh of relief. Tang Zheng patted her head, looked at the main root in her hand, and said, "This is only a semi-finished product. If it is refined, it will definitely be able to unleash even more power and become a true sacred artifact." Linger said regretfully, "But I don't know how to refine artifacts." Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily and said, "Silly girl, I know how to." Linger blushed and said weakly, "I was too excited, I didn't think of it. Since your wish has been fulfilled, let's go up." Tang Zheng looked deeply at the main root. Linger waved her hand at the main root and flew out of the cave with the others. So everyone soared into the sky and flew out of the cave. All of the Witch Clan warriors surrounded them and looked at them anxiously. When they saw the lively Tang Zheng, they all heaved a sigh of relief and revealed an expression of ecstasy. Tang Zheng looked at them emotionally and said, "Thank you for your hard work." The Witch Clan warriors shook their heads and excitedly said that it wasn't hard at all. "Just now the mountains shook and the earth shook. We were worried to death. We thought something unexpected had happened," Yi Yuan said with lingering fear. "The mountains are shaking and the earth is shaking?" Everyone was surprised. "Didn't you guys feel it?" Yi Yuan asked curiously. The other Witch Clan warriors were also curious. Tang Zheng muttered to himself for a while, then said, "I understand. It must have been that great battle. After all, it was in the center of the earth, and it must have caused such a huge commotion. Since it was the core of the earth, then it would definitely not only affect this place, but it could also cause the entire world to tremble." He quickly spoke out his guess. Everyone was shocked at first, but they immediately felt that it made sense. After the Witch Clan warriors heard this, their faces were filled with shock. The movements of the Earth's core could affect the entire world. Wouldn't that mean that the entire world was shaking? This was simply unheard of. Tang Zheng stared at the big hole beside the tree trunk. With a point of his finger, a surge of energy shot out, and the surrounding soil quickly poured into the hole. Not long later, it was completely blocked. The Tree of Life is too important to this world. We were too careless in the past. Other than the formation protecting it, we should also send people to protect it and guard it to the death. We absolutely cannot make any mistakes, Tang Zheng said solemnly. The importance of the Tree of Life had once again increased by a level in his heart. Yi Yuan volunteered. "Leave this mission to me. I will definitely protect the Tree of Life. As long as I still have a breath of life left, I will definitely not let the enemy get close to it." Tang Zheng patted Yi Yuan's shoulder, shook his head, and said earnestly, "You still have other more important missions. Choose a few Witch Clan warriors to stay here and protect the Tree of Life." "All right," Yi Yuan angrily agreed, but he could not hold back his curiosity and asked, "Then what is my mission?" Tang Zheng said meaningfully, "Sky beyond heaven, that is your battlefield." Sky beyond heaven? Yi Yuan was shocked. Tang Zheng had already made his decision. He promised Xiao Bai that he would return to the sky beyond heaven, and since the spring festival had passed, he would have to keep his promise and return to the sky beyond heaven. However, this time it would definitely not be any easier than last time. He wanted to take revenge for Xiao Bai, so he would definitely have to go all out. A fierce battle was unavoidable. When the others heard this, they all looked at him in shock, but they gradually understood what he meant. All of them had different expressions. Some were excited, some were eager to try, and some were worried. Everyone returned and soared into the air. Everywhere they passed, the streets and alleys were filled with people. The mountains shook and the earth shook like an earthquake, causing the entire world to boil. Although there was no earthquake detected, nor was it that powerful, the ripples were so wide that it caught people off guard and made them even more unable to figure it out. Chapter 1647. The huge commotion around the world had alarmed the governments of various countries. The officials were the first to think of Tang Zheng, and he was the only one who could explain all of this. However, they were unable to break through the defensive array formation outside the villa, let alone force their way in. They could only wait here. Of course, they did not know that Tang Zheng was not in the villa, nor did they know about his situation. Therefore, when Tang Zheng and the others landed at this time, they quickly surrounded them. "Young Master Tang, please wait." They hurriedly shouted, but their attitude was extremely respectful. Tang Zheng stopped in his tracks and frowned slightly. He had guessed the reason for their visit, but he was not in a hurry to explain. He asked in a deep voice, "What's the matter?" The officials had also gradually gotten used to Tang Zheng's style, and did not beat around the bush. They went straight to the point and said, "Young Master Tang, this time, the entire world is in an uproar. I wonder if young Master Tang knows the reason? We also know what reason to use to appease the people." Tang Zheng said that he had indeed come for this matter, but he was not prepared to tell the other party the truth. He said indifferently, "This kind of thing will not happen again. As for how to appease the people, that is your specialty. There is no need for me to come up with a plan." With that, he turned around and walked back into the villa. Sigh, young Master Tang. How could the officials be satisfied with this answer? They quickly chased after him. "Halt!" Yi Yuan stood in front of the other party and stared at them with a stern expression. He was like a mountain, causing them to have no choice but to stop in their tracks. Tang Zheng entered the villa without even looking back. The officials stretched their necks and looked at his back, but there was nothing they could do. In the end, they could only return resentfully. As for the reason for all of this earth-shattering commotion, they could only guess. As for the excuse to appease the people, it was easy for them to do so, so there was no need to worry too much. Tang Zheng's return caused the entire villa to be filled with vitality again. The originally lifeless scene was completely brand new. Tang Dahai, Mu Hongyan and Nana stayed at home, and every second felt like a year. Now that they saw that he was safe and sound, they all heaved a sigh of relief. The family was happy and harmonious, and the atmosphere of the new year seemed to have returned. Moreover, the estrangement between the women seemed to have dissolved a lot because of this, like snow melting away. Furthermore, everyone deliberately created an opportunity for Tang Zheng and Linger to be alone. The two of them definitely had a lot to talk about. Everyone was happily sitting on the sofa and watching the rerun of the Spring Festival Gala. Linger's performance on the Spring Festival Gala in particular was remarkable and very attractive. Tang Zheng had sharp ears and sharp eyes. He could vaguely hear the praises for Linger outside the door. Looking at the uneasy Linger, he smiled and said, "Linger, they are all praising you. Did you hear that?" Linger shyly lowered her head and said, "I'm not as powerful as they say. The eyes of the masses are as clear as snow. Your efforts and achievements are obvious to everyone." Tang Zheng said as he lifted the hair by her ear. Linger slowly raised her head and innocently said, "Master, do you really think that Linger is outstanding?" Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily and said, "Of course you are outstanding. Is there anything to doubt about that?" Linger was unable to contain her joy and asked in surprise, "Really?" Her pair of sparkling eyes were filled with joy and anticipation. Although she had received the recognition of the world, it couldn't be compared to Tang Zheng alone. As long as Tang Zheng alone acknowledged her, then everything she had done would be worth it. Tang Zheng stared into her eyes with a burning gaze and nodded his head heavily. He firmly said, "Really?" Linger's face was like a flower in full bloom. In an instant, the room became as warm as spring. Linger was like a dancing butterfly as she flew into Tang Zheng's embrace. With a soft jade in his arms, a fragrant scent assailed his nostrils. Tang Zheng's head swayed as he subconsciously hugged her waist. Her waist was very thin and soft. Perhaps it was because she often practiced dancing, but her elasticity was astonishing. Linger's entire body tensed up. Previously, when she was in close contact with Tang Zheng, it was when Tang Zheng was unconscious and did not have the ability to move. Now that she was tightly held in his embrace, the young girl's heart began to pound. Tang Zheng gently stroked her hair and gently said, Linger, I will definitely treat you well in the future. Linger foolishly raised her head and looked at him with little stars in her eyes. She said, Master, I am willing to do all of this. Linger is able to save Master. Linger is more than happy. But you have sacrificed too much. Tang Zheng sincerely said. Linger shook her head. Not much. Everything I have belongs to Master. Tang Zheng was deeply moved. His arms tightened around her, as if he wanted to squeeze her into his embrace. Master, there is someone outside. Linger was moved, but she also shyly whispered. Tang Zheng released his hands and lowered his head. He lightly pecked her lips. Linger's face instantly turned red to the roots of her neck. Seeing her like this, Tang Zheng's head shook slightly. However, he still calmed down and said, Linger, take out the main root. I will refine a magic weapon for you. This was something that had to be done before going to Sky Beyond Heaven. Why not take this opportunity to do it? When Linger heard this, she was overjoyed. She quickly suppressed the shyness in her heart and quickly took out the main root. She held it with both hands and said, Master, this fast? Tang Zheng waved his hand, and the 9 revolving pill furnace flew out and hovered in front of the two of them. Master, for you. Linger wanted to pass the main root to him. Tang Zheng refused. He pointed at the 9 revolving pill furnace and said, Put the main root into the furnace. Only Linger could touch the main root. Linger suddenly realized this. She playfully stuck out her tongue. She held the main root with both hands and carefully placed it into the 9 revolving pill furnace. You watch from the side. I will refine a magic weapon for you. Linger excitedly nodded her head. Her eyes were wide open as she stared at him and the furnace. She was full of expectations. Tang Zheng extended his finger and pointed at the furnace. A ball of heavenly fire flew from his finger into the furnace. With a boom, the furnace was completely lit up by the flames. A ball of green light flew out from the furnace. In an instant, the pictures of birds and beasts on the walls of the furnace moved as if they were alive. They quickly moved around the walls of the furnace. That ball of green light was immediately bound by an invisible force. It was unable to escape from the 9 revolving pill furnace. This ball of green light became brighter and brighter. It was as if it wanted to escape from the furnace. However, in the end it was unable to do so. If one looked into the furnace, they would be shocked to see that the main root had changed. It was already completely surrounded by heavenly fire. It was burning fiercely. Little green lights flew out from the main root like fireflies. This was the purest energy refined from the main root. The heavenly fire's power was extraordinary. Even the tree of life's main root, which was safe and sound in the lava, was being refined little by little. From this, one could see the power of the heavenly fire. Of course, this was also because the main root had already been separated from the tree of life. Without the support of the tree of life, its resistance was greatly reduced, which was why it was so easy to be refined by the heavenly fire. Linger's eyes widened. This was the first time she had witnessed someone refine a magic weapon. Moreover, it was a magic weapon that was refined for her. Everything was full of novelty. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.